Hereby call this General Purpose and Administration meeting held Monday, September 11th at 1:30 p.m. to order. I'd like to start off before our moment of silence to read out something, as today is an anniversary of 9/11. So there's, before that, National Firefighters Memorial Day. Federal Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness Minister Ralph Goodale recently announced that the second Sunday in September will be recognized as National Firefighters Memorial Day. The day will serve as a tribute to public safety officers who have died in the line of duty. In honor of the 2017 National Firefighters Memorial Day on Sunday, September 10th, the flag on Parliament Hill was lowered for the first time to specifically honor firefighters. Locally, flags at our fire stations flew at half-mast from sunrise until sunset. Now, remembering 9/11, many of us remember clearly the horrible events of September 11th, 2001 that took the lives of 2,977 victims. A plane striking the World Trade Center North Tower, a second plane striking the World Trade Center South Tower, the collapse of both towers, a third plane striking the Pentagon, and the downing of Flight 93. The attacks on September 11, 2001 were an attack on freedom, shattering our sense of safety. Remembering 9/11 acknowledges the victims, the heroic actions of emergency personnel and citizens alike. Remembering 9/11 allows us to uphold our principles of freedom and a way of life. Please join me in remembering 9/11 with this moment of silence. Please rise. Please be seated. So there was no closed session today, so before the open session, so we'll move right on to pecuniary interest in open session. Seeing none, we'll move on to announcements from council and staff. Starting off with council, Councillor Somerville, then Councillor Guido.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I would like to make an announcement that on Labor Day weekend, which was, September, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, the 164th Port Perry Fair was held at the Port Perry Fairgrounds. It was well attended. They had lots going on from Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and a good crowd was in attendance. And also on August the 14th to the 16th, we had our AMO conference in Ottawa. That's the Amalgamated Municipal Council conference in Ottawa. And it was well attended too. I think there was 1,500 that were there. So that was a good event in Ottawa. Thank you for allowing us to go.
Councillor Guido.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to announce that on Sunday, September 24th, the BIA is hosting their annual chili cook-off. This year, the tasting will start at noon and will run until 2 o'clock or until the chili runs out. Just like other years, it is $10 for your mug. You can purchase the mug downtown. It's a great event for the community to come out and try some delicious chili. I would also like to extend our thanks and gratitude to our Scugog Fire Department, as well as all other responding emergency services that assisted during the fire at the Port Perry Hospital. Words don't express our gratitude enough, but if you can please extend it to the gentleman, we would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Are there announcements from council? Announcements from staff? Yes, Ms. Valentine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to announce that the 2018 budget process has begun, and I would like to invite residents to go online and fill in our budget survey for 2018. It'll be online until September 22nd. Thank you.
Any other announcements from staff? Just a reminder that the 2017 for Scugog Charity Golf Tournament is Thursday, September 21st. It's the 17th annual for Scugog Charity Golf Tournament. So I just want to remind everybody to forms and registrations, sponsorship opportunities are on the scugog.ca website, and look forward to seeing fellow staff and council members on the course, and fellow residents and business owners, because we'd like to get enough attendance, because all the funds proceeds go towards helping out youth and other initiatives in Scugog. So it's a committee of staff that organize this. A lot of work goes into it, so we want to make sure it's a great success. So make sure the message goes out to fellow residents and business owners to make sure we have enough enrollment, and I'm hoping that we'll see other council members as before there. Okay. Moving on to the next item, final call for announcements. None. Next is the presentations. Ms. Fox up with 8.1 for presentations, core services efficiency review on crossing guards.
Okay. Mr. Mayor and members of council, this presentation is part of the Core Services and Efficiency Review, and this one is entitled School Crossing Guards. So we're doing, of course you know, core service reviews, which will examine the level of service and most efficient and cost-effective delivery of those services. Part of this presentation today will cover what we are doing now, what is costing us, recent improvements, and conclusions and next steps. So there are three areas of strategic direction that the school crossing guards fall under. It would be financial sustainability, municipal services, and community engagement. What we are doing now, we have 8 locations where we have school crossing guards presently. They all started just this previous week. The 8 locations are listed there in front of you. One of the locations has 2 crossing guards at it. That's the Simcoe and Highway 7A location, and the rest of them have 1 guard at them. Existing staff resources, there is 1 school crossing guard supervisor, that would be me, and we have 9 part-time guards, 1 spare guard, we have 3 trained emergency spare guards, so that's just other people in our staff that have had the crossing guard training and are prepared in case of emergency to do a school crossing. And we're currently seeking 2 to 3 additional spare guards that we'd like to have on hand for emergencies. Equipment. So crossing guards are outfitted with, of course, stop paddles, vest, a whistle, and an ID badge, and outer gear. So we are, some of them have purchased already a jacket or coat, rain pants, things like that, and we supply some of that as well. And the training equipment that we have supplied is an updated training manual that was updated in August of 2017, and each of the crossing guards attended a training session at the end of August. So existing hours of work, crossing guards, their shifts vary depending on their location and the walking distance from the school to get to the location. The bell times at the schools as well play a large part in us arranging for the shift times. Most of the guards have a 1-hour shift in the morning and 1-hour shift in the afternoon. And then there are 2 locations on Queen Street and on 7A, the mid-block right in front of Cornish, where there are lunch shifts. This is a map just identifying the locations for the crossing guards and the times that they are available at their stops. So our existing level of service, the crossing guards do provide an excellent level of service. Each day crossing guards engage with families in the area in which they work, as well as the students and school staff. All crossings are covered by regular spare guards, and in emergency, if no guards are available, as I said, staff will cover the shift. This is what historically it has cost the township for the school crossing guards. We anticipate, so because the school year is different than the budget year. The budget year goes from basically January to December. The school year goes from September to June. So that's why it's only showing partial budget for this year. So recent improvements, we did update, as I said, our training manual just recently, and all crossing guards took a mandatory training with it. We implemented a 3-whistle system at all crossings starting this year in 2017. That came as a request by the Durham Police in a meeting we had with them. Most other municipalities were using a whistle and a 3-whistle system, so we began to implement that. The other thing we are working on improving is to ensure that we do have spare guard coverage. 3 to 4 spare guards is ideal for the number of crossings that we have, and so we are actively recruiting spare crossing guards. If anybody knows anybody that wants to be a crossing guard, they can definitely contact us and we'll provide them with the training. And we'll endeavor to have all crossing guards recognized by providing clothing in accordance with the crossing guard manual. So in the past, they've been permitted to purchase their own clothing for the crossings, but it's very important that consistency with clothing with the crossing guards to make them stand out and be recognizable to students and to traffic. So we are coming up with a system where they will all look the same and be dressed the same, and ensure that they are all trained in accordance with the new Ontario Traffic Council Crossing Guard Manual. Also, we will have an application process on our website, and we will be accepting applications for regular and spare guards year-round, just to ensure that we have a good pool of applicants to go to when we need to. We're meeting with school staff to discuss their needs and our schedules. And due to the change in school bell times, school crossing coverage needs have changed as well. So the school bells between the schools, both separate school and not separate school, there used to be a time of about an hour between their bell times. Anytime between one went at 8, another went a little later, and then at 9 o'clock. And that meant for some of our crossing guards that had multiple schools to cross, their crossing times were much larger spans, so they could catch the bells at both schools. Now the schools just this year have changed their bell times to bring them all closer together, and they all start within 15 minutes of each other. So that has enabled us to make all of the crossings very consistent and ensure that proper coverage for each location. So for the 2016-17 season, we had 115 total weekly hours for the crossing guards, and this year we have 106. We have the same number of crossing guards crossing approximately the same number of children, it's just that the times have come together better with the board. And so there's an approximate savings of about $6,700 per year just in that adjustment. In conclusion, our next steps. So we do have a crossing guard warrant study scheduled for this fall. We will be looking at all the crossings we have now, and as well any that have requests in to place a crossing guard at the intersection. We also plan on adding a crossing guard page to the township website with information, duty locations, and times, along with general information on crossing guards. This will be a resource for the school, parents, students, and staff. And we will meet, as I said, with school staff and members of Durham School Boards to discuss their needs and implement anything that they need. And we're going to also, we have a new stop paddle with a flashing light on it that we're going to be trying out to see if that is a good option for our crossing guards. If it means that cars can see them better and understand what's going on, then we definitely could implement that. That's it. Any questions?
Thank you very much for that, Ms. Fox. Before we go into questions, I failed to mention when we were opening up the meeting that Councillor Watton is notified us to be absent today due to a family funeral, and Councillor Drew is tied up, will be arriving later. She's at the Durham Regional Police Services Board. So, questions to Ms. Fox's presentation. Councillor Back?
Thank you through the mayor, and thanks, Lori. And I wanted to also publicly thank you for resolving a little issue just before the school year started, and resolving that quickly so that the parent was assured that her children would be getting to school safely, because she was very panicked. And I applaud you for addressing that and resolving that just before the school year started. So I really do appreciate that. Our crossing guards are our unsung heroes. They are our guardians for our children to get to and from school safely, and I am so pleased that I don't see here a call for any reductions. You've just made my day. So thank you, and thank you for that flashing sign. Looks amazing as well, because there's just so much going on, traffic going on, and sometimes, you know, people need that little flashing light to catch their eye to see exactly who's crossing that crossing that street. So I feel that our children are better protected going into the future, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Councillor Somerville?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My accolades to you for that, because it's really a heavy job that for crossing guards, and I give you a lot of credit for putting that together. I only have one little question, and I'm so happy that you're doing this. Well, two things, because I love your stop sign. That's going to really make people aware that there's kids crossing. Where's your emergency guards? What location? You said you had 3 emergency guards. Where are their locations?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the emergency guards are members of our staff, so from the Public Works Department, that also took the training. So they have, obviously, their full set of duties that they perform every day, and then in an emergency, they have been trained and are available to act as crossing guards should the need come.
Oh, that's what they are, okay. So if there's an accident, do they all take first aid? Are the crossing guards, do they take a first aid course before they are implemented on the streets?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we did look into first aid training, and I know that some of them have taken it in the past. It's not a requirement through WSIB that they do take first aid, but we did outfit. One of the things I didn't mention in my list, I apologize, is they each do have a little first aid kit with them that they're going to carry on their person. It's a personal first aid kit for themselves, but it's not a requirement that they take first aid.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I just remember the tragedy that we had on 7A, and God knows it's never going to happen again, but you never know, and just what they would do in the event of an emergency like that. And because we're on so many highways and traffic is so crazy these days, I think it's a great idea if they do have some sort of just a quick educational training on what to do in the event of an accident. Thank you.
Any other? Councillor Kent?
Thank you, Mayor. I just have I'm not sure if you and Councillor Back have answered this, but the time change of the Cocker School, is that what you were talking about? Because they changed their hours? So how did that affect you?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, that's right. The school times did change. Councillor Back and I were talking about a different incident with a parent. But the school times did change. Like I said, there was a very large gap in the times that the schools went in. I believe the first one went in a little after 8:15, and then there was one that went in at 9. So our guards, as you know, because of their locations, cross from multiple schools. So by them bringing all of those times together, it made it so much easier for coordination of the stops and making sure that all of the times were covered in a budget-friendly manner for us.
So my concern about that is, did they contact you with a change of hours, or did you just find out?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, they did contact us.
Okay.
They did late in the school year last year, and then it was up on their website throughout the summer.
Perfect. The only other thing is, you talked about a warrant study. Who's doing that? What's the cost of that? And why do we need one?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we do a warrant study regularly, just to make sure that the complement that we have of crossing guards is, first of all, warranted. The ones that are out there are needed. Having an up-to-date count of how many children use the crossings is important, to make sure they're, like we did last time we did that warrant study, we did find out then that we needed 2 guards at Simcoe and 7A. So it's not always about taking away, sometimes it's about increasing coverage. So it's very important that we do that. The Ontario Traffic Council Crossing Guard Guide suggests you do it every other year. We do it when we can. It is performed by staff as one of our regular duties.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Just couple quick questions. I saw you there the first day of school on 7A Simcoe Crossing. And we do have some major provincial highways and regional roads, cross-sections. I think there can never be enough safety enhancements. Has there been any update on what we can do, or with MTO, or if they will provide flashing lights for crossings, like additional slow down, like 40-kilometer ones? Like I'm talking about the Beaverton intersection on Highway 12, just north of that, in front of the school that's just north of the Tim Hortons there. They have a flashing 40 sign, and it's pretty close to streetlights. And I just wondered, in the past, it seems like it's difficult to get anything on a provincial highway. Has there been any update, or anybody looking at that again as staff in the province or in the MTO change, that maybe there's a different body that'll look at it?
Not that I'm aware of, Mr. Mayor. They abide by, of course, the Highway Traffic Act, which the Ontario Traffic Council School Crossing Guide is in accordance with the Highway Traffic Act. We have had requests to them for certain changes at locations, some of them, most of them not related to crossing guards, and it is difficult to get them on board with our requests, just because they have certain rules that they abide by in the Highway Traffic Act. The flashing signs that you talk about, that is something that is available for us to put at any crossing. In particular, the ones on 7A, of course, we would have to have MTO's approval on those, but I'm sure that they would likely approve them if we paid for them. And they're expensive.
And you know what I'm talking about is during school hours, it's
Yeah.
a reduced speed limit, right?
Yeah, they have them in Oshawa as well.
Yeah, and there are elsewhere. So with part of this process and all that, can you provide us the cost estimates and the process, just because it'd be nice to know if that is an option, that we can look at that for adding that, because it's one of those things where, like I said, if anything we can do to enhance the safety, those center line identifiers are fantastic. It's unfortunate we can't put them at all the crossings. It'd be nice. Is there an update on that? Because I know we have them in Prince Albert and on Queen Street and Port Perry. Are there any other ones where they were eligible that we were looking at putting them in?
Mr. Mayor, there are no other locations that we have that they're eligible for other than the 7A. Again, that is a signalized crossing there, a pedestrian crossing. And so I think that we have requested before with MTO to see if they would allow us to put them there, and they said no, that they're not, they wouldn't put them there because in accordance with the Highway Traffic Act, when it's a signalized crossing like that, it's not needed. We can certainly attempt again to request them from them, but that would be the only other location.
And the old Simcoe crossing where the curling club, the Legion is?
At Chimney Hill, because that's an intersection and an offset intersection at that, they are not recommended for a location like that. We would have to move that crossing to more of a mid-block location where it's not at an intersection to make that.
Okay, so will the report touch on these?
Yes, it will.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the report. And looking for a mover to receive the crossing guard report, moved by Councillor Guido. All those in favor? Carried. Next up, we have our core services review. Director Coleman is going to present on the next two reports, patching and potholes and winter maintenance. Yep.
You're doing pothole patching?
To you, Mr. Mayor, and members of council, Mike Donnelly is not able to be here today, so I'll be giving his presentation on the core services and efficiency review regarding road patching practices. So this is very similar to the slide you just saw about crossing guards, why we're doing the core services review, and the presentation will cover what we're doing now, what it's costing us, look at various options, and what our conclusions and next steps are. So road patching fall in the strategic plan in two areas under strategic direction number 1, roads and other infrastructure, as well as strategic direction number 2, financial sustainability. As you know, our roads are not in the best of conditions, and potholes and pothole patching is a very significant issue for everyone. So what we're doing now, our road patching is performed by township staff. It usually consists of two crew members, 1 driver and 2 workers, or 3 members. And additional 2 workers are needed when traffic control is required, so flagmen for longer sites. All patching right now is done with a cold mix, and is done on an as-needed basis, typically as soon as they appear and we can get out there, all in accordance with the minimum maintenance standards. So these are the standards, the minimum maintenance criteria. It's based on a certain size of pothole. After it's been identified, if it's greater than that size, then depending on the class of the highway, we have response times of either 7, 14, or 30 days. As far as compaction goes, right now, we're really not compacting any potholes. We, at best, use the back of the shovel. It's usually left for vehicles to compact as they go by. It's known as a throw-and-go method. And why we do that is we just have so many potholes right now that we don't have the staff or the resources to compact each pothole as we go. Another thing that we did do this year, we did some crack sealing. So we hired a specialized contractor that does crack sealing, where they'll use compressed air to blow out the cracks and then use a sealing material. And ideally you should do this within the first 5 years of a road being paved to really lengthen the life of that road. This is what it's costing us right now. We're spending about $61,000 in cold mix asphalt. Roughly $83,000 of our payroll goes towards pothole patching, which is equivalent to about 3,000 man-hours doing the work. And this year we had $23,000 in our operating budget to do crack sealing. I've been told that we haven't done any crack sealing in township for 20 years. So we are far behind in that area, and we should be looking into doing more crack sealing as well. So we looked at 6 different options of how we could do our patching better. We could tamp in every patch using hot mix asphalt, spray patching, the Cadillac version, the automatic road patcher. enhancing our ditching and brushing, and hiring contractors. So tamping every patch, it just means that it takes longer to do each one. We put down cold mix, we use a tamper. The benefits are that the patch will last longer, the cold mix will stay in place for a longer time. The limitations are that you can do significantly less number of holes with the same amount of staff. So if we wanted to do as many holes as we're doing now, we'd need significantly more staff. And we estimate that it takes about 50% more time to actually stay and tamp each one. So then we look at hot mix patching. And the benefits of this is it's very pliable when it's hot, and it becomes much harder than the cold mix when it cools off. So it will stay in place for a lot longer time, estimates 2 to 3 times as long as a cold mix one. So it would reduce the number of times required to repair the same pothole. It improves public perception, and in reality, I mean, we don't want to go back every month to the same hole, and it doesn't look good when we do that either. And it increases the number of potholes that can be filled because we don't have to go back as often, so we can get to more of them. There are some limitations with it. Seasonally and geographic limitations. So that means in the winter, there's only a couple asphalt plants open. They're in Toronto, so it would take a lot longer to get there. And also, placing hot mix in the winter, it's not as good of a material as it is in the summertime when you use hot mix. And geographic as well. So even in the summer, when the more asphalt plants are open, you have to drive to the asphalt plant, get the hot asphalt, put it in a hot box, and keep it hot until you put it down. You can't stockpile on the sites because it just cools down, and you can't reuse it once it cools off. And it's a use it or lose it kind of thing. So whatever you put in your hot box, you have to use up during that day. So the costs per ton are very similar to the cold mix. And the real cost for them would be buying a hot box for them. So that's about $40,000 to $45,000 per box, and there's a photo of an example of one. Another option we looked at was spray patching. So in this case, you have a tank with a mixture of stone and asphalt, and you spray it into the potholes. And it can be done with just one crew member, so just one person can drive and then spray the stone and emulsion. The benefits are you need less staff, it's more versatile, you can use it for potholes, you can also use it to repair shoulders. It's better than cold mix, and it has been along for quite a while, and it's a proven method. The limitations are it's not as long-term as a hot mix material, and because it's kind of spraying it out, or is spraying it out, you end up with loose stones around the patch. So you'll get a lot of complaints in an urban area that people won't want to see that. But it does work well in the rural areas. And you can't use it below 5 degrees Celsius, so you can't use it year-round. The cost for a spray patcher is about $110,000 for the capital cost. This is the automatic road patcher. So it's a self-propelled pothole machine, and it uses standard asphalt mixes. What it does is there's a hopper in the back with the hot asphalt, and there's a conveyor that sprays out the asphalt material onto the road, and then there's a built-in roller too that will compact it. So it does give you long-lasting patches. You can do, if you have a long crack or a long repair down the road, you can do a long continuous joint down the road. It can be done with just one staff member, and you don't need to do traffic control because you have flashing lights on the vehicle to warn cars. The limitations is that it's not yet a tried and tested method in Canada. There are a few municipalities that have a small amount of them. I think I've heard of about 5 different ones within Canada right now, and they are fairly expensive. I've heard cost estimates between like $350 and $450 to purchase one. So this isn't specifically pothole patching, but this prevents the potholes from happening. So this option is to enhance our ditching and brushing program. So deeper ditches give you proper drainage in the road and gets water out of the road structure. Brushing on the sides improves safety sight lines. It also gives you better drainage, and once you expose sun to the road, it will dry better as well. So if we can get water out of the road, we'll have less potholes to start with. The limitations with this, it takes quite a bit of labor and equipment to do this work. There can be utility conflicts which can make it very challenging. Some places you just can't do it because of the utilities. Seasonal constraints, public perception, they think we're just brushing just to make things look better, and deeper ditches, so if people have a deeper ditch in front of their property, they need to maintain the grass in that ditch, and that can be a challenge. And the soil that we excavate from the ditches too, we have to find somewhere to put it. Right now, we do spend a fair amount of money on ditching and brushing, but we're not keeping up with what needs to be done throughout the township. Last year we spent about $130,000 on ditching and about $65,000 on brushing. Another option is to hire contractors to do the pothole filling. So we have staff, this will make township staff available to do other maintenance operations. The benefits are they have the specialized equipment and the trained staff. They have immediate productivity, we don't need to train them. They own the equipment, so it's less equipment for us, and it frees up staff, as I said, for other maintenance. The limitations is we lose control about when things happen, and we might potentially not meet the minimum maintenance standards. And another limitation is it does cost more than using our own staff. So in the summer, it costs about $2,600 per day plus material, and in the winter, it's $3,000 or more per day. So, after reviewing all these options, what we are recommending is trying to get 2 hot box trailers as part of the 2018 capital budget. And obviously, we can't commit to that until we go through the budget process and make sure that there is funding available, but we think that would be a really wise investment for the township. Review the purchase of a spray patcher for future budgets, increase our budget for crack sealing, ditching, and brushing. And also, in the future, we can look at, once it's a little more tried and tested, we can look into whether an automatic road patcher really would be worth the investment, and considering contracting out our work to a hot mix contractor. If anyone has any comments on these conclusions or any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Thank you very much for the report. It's probably one of the biggest issues, and I'm sure your department fields a lot of the complaints, and I'm happy to see that we're looking at alternatives and a way of improving what we have and preserving new roads that are put down too. So that's great. So I'll hand it over to questions from Councillor Kett and Councillor Somerville.
Thank you. I'd be interested to see some of the numbers and the savings that are part of these, because I'm very interested in an automatic road patcher that we could co-own with Uxbridge and Brock or something like that. Would you think that we would have a full-time, I mean, we might right now have a full-time job, but in the future, would we be using that full-time, or would a co-ownership with other municipalities be an answer to that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, we haven't had any discussion internally about co-ownership. Right now, if we had one, I could see it would be used full-time, and probably for many years to come, we could use it full-time, so I'm not sure co-ownership would work.
Okay, the other thing that I'd like to see some kind of an impact study, that if we have an automatic machine like that, it looks to me like it's a one-man person. What are our savings if we don't have 3 or 4 people or 5 people out there doing the same job? So I'd like to see those numbers. I realize that the amount that we would pay for an automatic patcher would be a lot higher, but in the long run, if we have 1 person operating versus 6 or 5, there may be savings in the long run. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Somerville's up next.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was nice, Carol. It really brought a lot into focus, because you've done some work here. And just looking, as you were speaking, I'm thinking about our roads, our own roads, and especially in my ward, because I think I only have just a couple of paved roads. I don't have a lot of paved roads. Does Blackstock have a lot? Blackstock, our ward 4.
Does it have a lot of paved roads?
Does it have a lot of paved roads? Yes.
I'm not sure how to answer that. There are several hard surface roads in the Blackstock area, yes.
Because I only have one that I can think of, and that's the 6th line. And then I have Ashburn, which is slurry seal. Can you use that in slurry seal?
Yes, I believe you can.
You can, okay. So that's the only 2 roads that I can think of. The rest of them are regional roads in my area.
There's Marsh Hill Road as well. Parts of it are a hard surface.
Only just through Epsom, not anywhere else. Down to Utica, I think that's about as far as it goes. I know my roads well. And there isn't, that I can't think of hardly any. But I can, if there was another ward that could do it. Uxbridge has all of their wards, all of their roads are asphalted. And I mean, they would be one that would really, could do with this. I was thinking perhaps if they went ahead and purchased one, maybe we could rent it off them every so often and did our few little roads that we have that are paved, because most of my roads are in marsh areas, and you're certainly not going to pave those roads. What was the other question? Oh, I guess it was the Slurry Seal Road. Yeah, I can't think of very many roads that, in my area that would be required, although I think the hot box would be a good idea. But maybe, like Mr. Ketz said, or Councillor Ketz said, perhaps, you know, we could do it alongside with Durham or something, or we could rent them off of Durham instead of, did you look at that other way?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor, there are so few available right now, I'm not aware of any rentals of them.
Yeah. Okay, that was my question.
To me, I feel like it might be the solution for Scugog, but in a few years, when other municipalities, and it's more common, when they've been tried and tested a little more, and they can get all the quirks out, the municipalities have a little more money to work with.
That's right, exactly. Brock, I know, is starting to pave a few more of their roads, hard surface their roads. But that's the only one. Uxbridge is all done, but we're definitely not. So I think we're more concerned about making sure they're graded and making sure the potholes are filled in along the grades. And the washouts this year along the side of the road are incredible.
Just to add to that, we do have 220 kilometers of paved roads in the Township of Scugog.
So it must be over in that area.
Well, just, Councillor Somerville, don't forget the subdivision roads inside Greenbank and Seagrave.
Yeah.
I know it's not a great distance, but there's
Or not many.
potholes usage, but...
Yeah, I can understand it, but I just think that not for my ward. I can see the reasoning behind it, but in maybe a few years from now, when we start paving, if we ever do. Thank you.
Councillor Back.
Thank you. Through the mayor, I have a couple of questions. So, each of these hot box trailers, and you have to use it that day, how many potholes approximately can be filled in a day with one hot box trailer? Because they don't look that big.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Councillor, I don't have that data, and it would depend a lot on the size of the pothole. So some areas, it could be a much larger area, and it would do much fewer. So I don't know exactly how many can be done with.
Is there any way before we make a decision if we want to include this in our 2018 budget, if we can get a rough estimate from other municipalities on sort of the mean pothole per trailer that they get, the yield?
Yes, I'll try to get that.
Also, if we were to be considered purchasing hot box trailers for the 2018 budget, in next steps, why would we consider contracting out then? I would think the benefit of contracting out is so that we don't have to purchase the hot box trailers and the materials because it's included in that. So why would we have our product to give a contractor to use? Like, to me, it's sort of it's canceling each other out. We either go ahead and commit to purchasing our own hot box trailers and use our own staff, or we save not purchasing capital and contract out.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Councillor, we wouldn't go ahead and do that. What we'd do, we'd buy the hot box trailers now and see how that goes, see if we can keep up with the demand for potholes. And if we found that even with that we couldn't, then we could consider contracting some of it out. But I would prefer to see the hot box trailers first.
And then lastly, at the conference, there was a company that
I believe they're from Barrie, that I'd love to see do a deputation to council prior to our finalization of the budget with regards to sort of shave and pave roads where they, I don't know if you saw that as well, Mr. Mayor, where they take a larger section instead of individually addressing potholes. They take a larger section, shave it down, put down whatever the material is, seal it, and we were told it's a quarter of the cost of paving, like the hardcore paving, and it would last approximately 9 to 10 years and could be resealed prior to that lifespan and get another 9 to 10 years. So for me, I think that's also another consideration as well, when you have those areas where if the under part of the road is in good condition and just the top is multiple potholes, instead of having staff having to fill so many, to just fix that area and a quarter of the cost and get more kilometers done. I think that would do a great deal for at least the asphalt part of our urban area, and would help with motivation for staff as well, because they won't have that negative perception of constantly going back to the same pothole. And then we can then focus on our rural roads if we don't have to keep addressing the potholes, and get those addressed as well for our rural residents. Something to think about.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, yes, there are a number of methods maintaining a road. You mentioned slurry seal briefly. Shave and pave is a very common method. It's been happening for years. Somewhere like Queen Street, right through the downtown area, is prime right now for a shave and pave, because the surface, it hasn't gone really deep into the surface. Some roads, like Balsam, are way past the shave and pave. But some other roads that aren't deteriorated as far, that would be a good method to do it. Again, we have limited budget. We can't keep up with all the things that need to be done with the road, but definitely shave and pave, or just patching larger areas rather than when it's pothole and pothole already, would be better to do. I agree.
Any other comments? I was just going to, Councillor Kett.
Thank you. Just one more question. We're talking about hot boxes, we're talking about patching, automatic patching machines. You also said that there's the nearest asphalt plant is in Scarborough, which is...
In the winter, sorry.
In the summer, where is it?
In the summer, there's one in Whitby, there's one in Oshawa, and there's one in Kawartha.
Like Miller, like that type of plant, you mean? Like Miller?
Yes.
Yeah. Because what I'm looking at is, if we have a trailer, hot box trailer, we'd tow it behind our vehicle.
Yes.
And then we would take it down and get it filled at wherever it is. It just seems to me like that is an asset, putting $100,000 worth of asset traveling back and forth. So, is there other ways, number one, that we send down our one-ton single axle to get a load and have it with a skid steer load the boxes? I don't see assets moving down the road all the time, and it seems like a waste if we can have actually our dump trailer go down and pick it up. I just want to know if that's possible. You know what I'm saying?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, I don't think that's possible. You need something to be able to keep the asphalt at a certain temperature. I think it's 120 degrees Fahrenheit or something, and it wouldn't stay that hot in one of our dump trucks, because there's no lid on it, there's no heating source. So it has to be something like this hot box that's propane heated and can keep the temperature where it needs to be.
I understand that, but I'm still looking at a lot of paving trucks from Croupi and everybody running all over the highways with...
Yeah, that is the
unheated.
downside to it.
Anyways, yeah, it was just a thought that I had, that we've got these moving back and forth, and then we get into the mechanics and the servicing of these, because they're putting so many, we got 100,000 miles on a trailer that we've only repaired 2 miles of road. Just a thought. Thank you.
I'm just going to bring up, my understanding, a point about my understanding is that we do have staff currently that have worked in other municipalities that have operated or dealt with the hot box, right? So it's not going to be a big learning curve for them going from coal patch to the hot box, right, and maintaining it. And the other note, just on the Cadillac version or the automatic patcher, I saw that at FCM in June. It looks good, but I believe that they would offer a pilot. Is that still an option, that we could have this machine that, I believe they have, Montreal has 3 or 5 of them, but we could have a pilot of them come and demonstrate? Because I'd be curious to see. I think it's a Canadian company that builds these, so I agree with you that any solution that we have that's put out there is going to be utilized at great length. So one that could tackle more with less people involved with it would be might pay for itself in savings. So I'm just would like to know more about that. Is basically what I don't know. What's the next steps from this report to the budget on the hot box drillers? Is there any opportunity, or are we still going to be looking at other solutions come the spring? So,
Mr. Mayor, we probably could get them. Actually, I don't know. We could contact them and see if they could do a pilot. I still think I would prefer for other municipalities to sort out the kinks, and maybe 2 years, 3 years from now, then we consider buying one. We also do have such a tight budget, and we just bought a grader this year. We have another grader that's not going to last much longer. I'm just not sure we can justify spending $400,000 for it at this time.
Yeah, no, and I agree with the capital cost outlay. I was just thinking that we didn't have to make a decision on them. They could pilot for this year, so we know what it's capable of. So if we've got it on the wish list for year 2 down the road or year 3, we've seen it, because I know that as they're becoming more popular, that they're willing to pilot. So
Okay.
if the worst is we get some potholes done for free, that would be great. But my understanding is it's actually farm equipment that's been built for this road patching. So I've not seen it operational, but I'd be curious to see, since we have one of our biggest woes is road potholes. So okay, any other questions? So that's been moved by Councillor Somerville that the presentation be received. All those in favor? Carried. Next is Ms. Coleman, Director Coleman, is the next presentation on winter maintenance.
Thank you. So the next core services and efficiency review we looked at was the winter maintenance for the township. This slide looks a lot like the last 2 presentations, so I won't go through it. It ties into our strategic plan for roads and other infrastructure, financial sustainability, and municipal services. What we're doing now. So right now, we maintain 220 kilometers of paved roads, 192 kilometers of gravel roads, 18 bridges and box culverts, 25 kilometers of sidewalk, 15 parking lots, 2 fire halls. And in the last winter, we had 15 plow routes for the roads, and they all take 4 to 6 hours per route, and 2 plow routes for sidewalks, which are 5 to 8 hours per route. This is all done by a relatively small number of staff. We have 1 operations manager, Mike Donnelly, 2 assistant operation managers, 1 in Port Perry and 1 in Blackstock, 2 lead hands, 13 operators. The lead hands also work as operators, so we have 15 people out driving on the roads. A contracted operator who operates a grader. We hire 2 seasonal operators at night and a weekend patrolman. And for the sidewalk and parking lots, it's done by our parks group. So there's a lead hand, a horticulturist, a certified parks attendant, and also some contracted services for parking lots. So right now we have a total of 21 full-time staff, 2 seasonal, 1 part-time, and some contractors. Equipment-wise, we have 11 tandem axle combination plow and sander units. We had 4 that broke down this year. We were managed to replace 3 of them with used units. So we used to have 12, now we're down to 11. We have 1 single axle, combination plow and sander, 3 graders, a contracted grader, and 3 sidewalk plows, and 2 pickup trucks. Right now, the full-time staff work from 7 a.m. to 3:30, Monday through Friday, and those hours are extended whenever needed for snow removal and ice maintenance. We have a night shift last winter that worked from 10:30 p.m. to 7 a.m., starting from Sunday night to Friday morning, and that was just 2 operators who patrolled and cleared snow as necessary. And we have 1 weekend patrol person, a part-time person who worked 18 hours over the weekend, various shifts. They were not an operator, they just patrolled and called staff, or called the assistant managers when needed. So typically between shifts there was about a 7-hour gap, and there was sometimes where it was even 10.5 hours between shifts. So road classifications are done as per the Ontario Regulation 23902, also known as the minimum maintenance standards. And they classify roads based on the average annual daily traffic, or like how many cars are on the road, and the posted or statutory speed limit. So there's 6 different classifications of roads, 1 through 6. The township is not responsible for any class 1 or 2 roads. They're all regional roads. And class 6 don't apply to these maintenance standards. So right now what we're doing, again, I really believe our staff provide an excellent level of service for the residents as far as snow goes. We deploy resources typically as soon as it starts to snow or ice is observed. And we start plowing when there's 5 centimeters of clearing on hard surfaces and at intersection on hills for gravel. And all roads basically receive the same level of service right now. What is it costing us? A lot. It's a significant amount of our tax dollars go to the clearance of snow and ice. The costs, total costs are somewhere between 1.2 to 1.5 million a year. And we also have a significant amount of overtime hours. Last year we had 2,500 man hours in overtime. Areas for improvement. So when we did this review, we talked to staff and we went through what we're doing now and looked at how we can do things better. At night, currently, we have 1 seasonal person in the Blackstock Depot and 1 in the Port Perry Depot. And that has safety concern, having 1 person work in each area at night, and if something happened to them, it could be hours till someone found out. Also, our assistant operation managers were very burnt out last year. They worked a lot of hours. If there was snow in the middle of the night, they would get a call, they would drive in, they would assess it and determine whether or not to call in staff. And also on weekends, they were called in every time there was a decision to be made. We also, as I noticed, have very high overtime hours for union staff. Because we're spending so many hours, we're maxing out staff. The Ministry of Labor has maximums, and once you reach those maximums, it could be a snowstorm outside, but we're sending staff home because they've got too many hours already. And the gaps between shifts were a little bit large, especially during evenings. We have no backup for equipment or staff, so if someone's off sick or injured or equipment breaks down, which happens quite a bit, there's no backup. But our levels of service, despite all that, do typically exceed the minimum maximums, the minimum maintenance standards. So what we're recommending is to revise the hours of the night shift and the weekend patroller, temporarily convert 1 operator position into a new lead hand, prioritize roads, update the level of service, and update the policy. So the new shift hours, so instead of 10:30 till 7, when people aren't on the roads very much, changing it from 6 p.m. to 2:30, this will keep the snows cleared during the busy evening times when people are traveling as well. And also, if they start at 6, if there's a lot of snowfall in the daytime shift, can be extended from 3:30 till 6, so we can have full coverage in the evenings if needed. Or if we need the coverage in the morning instead, they can be extended. The night shift can extend till 4 a.m. when our day shift gets called in. That's the early time they usually come in when it snows quite a bit. This reduces the typical time between shifts, and the maximum time between shifts is also reduced. We're also proposing a new lead hand position. So this would be a temporary position from November 15th to April 15th. It would be one of our existing operator positions, bumped up to a lead hand during the winter, and they would supervise the night shift. They would be able to monitor weather and road conditions, also act as an operator to provide winter maintenance operations, and make judgment calls when to call in a 4 a.m. call. So the assistant road operations manager wouldn't have to be called in routine situations. This person would be trained to make that judgment call. But if unusual circumstances came up, they could then contract the assistant manager. So prioritizing road, as I mentioned before, it's based on traffic volumes and speeds, and we have class 3, 4, and 5. I've also looked, there are also roads are classified in our official plan. We have arterial roads, which are the most heavily traveled, collector roads, which connect areas, and then local roads. So we're suggesting prioritizing roads, making class 3s, arterial roads, and emergency EMS locations as the highest priority, which is actually even above what the minimum maintenance standards call for. So the class 3 roads, typical roads would be Queen Street, Old Simcoe, parts of Old Scugog, the section of Cartwright West Quarter Line between Church and 7A. There's others, those are just some examples. And arterial roads, we only have 2 arterial roads in Scugog. They're Scugog Line 6, the part that's being reconstructed right now, and King Street. And the EMS locations are Crandall Street and Paxton Street. Priority 2 would be class 4 roads, collector roads, and bus routes. Some examples of a collector are Union Avenue and Victoria Street. Queen and Old Simcoe are also collector, but they're also class 3, so they'd be priority 1. An example of class 4 road would be Pine Point Road, and there's actually most of the other roads are class 4 roads, or a high percentage of the other roads would be class 4. And class 5 roads, or priority 3 would be class 5 and local roads, so Steinway Drive, Alma Street, Sexton, and many courts would be class 5. Although we don't have updated traffic data on many of these roads, once we get that, they might actually become class 4s. So, this is our proposed level of service. The minimum maintenance standards say for class 3 and 4 and 5 that the snow can be up to 8 centimeters depth or 10 centimeters, and then for class 5, you don't have to go there for 24 hours. Now, I'm not suggesting that this is our normal routine at all. During weekdays and during the evening shift, and during weekdays, I think we'll almost always have much higher level of service than this. But perhaps if it starts snowing at 6 p.m. on a Saturday night, we should get someone out there to do the main roads, but some of the local roads might not get done until Sunday sometime. We have time to get there, so we don't necessarily need to do a full call-out during off times and incur those extra overtime hours. So just to explain more what this means, so when we've done some of the traffic counts this year, and we saw that 90% of the traffic occurs between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. So I think it's really good that we want to switch the night shift to the earlier time because there's not a lot of traffic happening at 2 a.m. And operations will be shifted to meet this demand. The day shift will be a full crew in place and will in most cases exceed the MMS. The night shift will be a smaller crew, and they'll be able to focus on the high priority roads and the problem areas. While there's some places that are probably a priority 2 or maybe even a priority 3, we know there's problem areas. There's drifting snow, and there's some hills that if we don't get to early, people won't be able to use. So we'll also focus on those type of areas. Typically between 8 p.m. and 4 a.m., there won't be a need to call out a full staff, except in a real blizzard. Then we would need to do it then. And again, a weekend staff will call out as they're needed, but when there's a significant snowball event, they'll definitely be out. But when it's lighter, we'll just be focusing more on the main roads. This will mean that staff is more available when they're needed most. We won't be maxing out staff as much as we were before, and I hope that we'll be reducing overtime hours, but at the same time maintaining or improving the service during the busy travel times. So the expected benefits from these changes is improved safety for the night shift because we're not going to have 3 people working in the night shift and they'll all be based out of the Port Perry Depot. It'll be improved level of service during busy travel times in the evening. There'll be less hours for the assistant managers and improved effectiveness when they are working, reduced overtime, reduced maxing out of staff, and less equipment backup required. So I mentioned that one of the tandems was out of service, and we're going to try this winter to operate without it because we can use the same equipment during the day as during the night. Some equipment saving costs too. So next steps, we've done some traffic counts. We've got about 50 locations done in the spring, and we're going to do about another 150 in the fall, so we can make sure these roads are classified what they should be classified at. And then we're going to continue to do traffic counts regularly in the future. Most roads haven't been done for at least 6 years, and some have never been counted that I can tell. We need to update the plow routes because we're going to have one less operator during the day because we're shifting someone to the night. So the plow routes will be slightly longer. Update the patrol routes. Clarify roles and responsibilities of staff, make sure they understand what the changes are. We're going to enhance our communication plan with the public so they can know what to expect and hopefully reduce the number of complaints for yourselves and staff as well. Create a training plan for staff, make sure staff all get the same core training. And we're also considering our core services and efficiency review. We're still looking at the potential amalgamation of the depots and looking at fleet management. If you have any questions on this, I'd be happy to take it as well.
Thank you very much for this report as well. Councillor Tett will start us off.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one comment. If we had signs outside our township limits that said from October till April, the speed limit is 50 kilometers an hour, would that lower our standards? Or our minimum maintenance standards?
I don't know that you can do seasonal speed reductions. I've never heard of that. I think as long as it was 80 kilometers at one time a year, that would be your class based on that.
Thank you.
Councillor Guido?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Coleman, I just have a couple of and are we asking questions to the staff report now, or their presentation?
Presentation and covers a lot of the staff
Okay,
report,
perfect. The consultant that is going to be retained, approximately what is the cost for this consultant to do the traffic study? Do you know offhand?
The cost is $30 per location, for the traffic counts?
Yes.
Yes, $30 per location. We're doing about 200 locations. We're spending about $6,000.
Okay, and then the next scheduled traffic count will be after our big boom of development, I'm assuming, because the numbers may significantly change based on the new development.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the traffic count should be done on a regular interval. We're only doing 200 road segments this year, which maybe a quarter of our road segments. So we still need to do the other ones as well. So it should be an ongoing program each year. We should spend a little bit each year on traffic counts.
Okay. And then I guess for the benefit of the residents, because depending on how they interpret it or hear this, they may hear that their roads may or may not be plowed as frequently or as often. If I was to describe this to a resident, what change are they expected to see then?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think they should see improved service in the evenings, but that some of the local streets, the ones with less traffic, might not see a plow as early as they used to see one, but that we would still maintain a reasonable level of service for them.
Perfect. And one further question that's actually in, actually, no, I already addressed that. Apologies. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Other questions from council? Just on the traffic counts, my understanding, or will this be added on to GIS software for staff use, the new data that we have? Do you know?
Mr. Mayor, yes, that's our intention, to add that as a layer to the GIS so it can be found very quickly.
So as the updating happens and we have traffic counts, we use that for more determinations, et cetera. So no, that's great. Okay, any other final questions? Seeing none, then I've moved by Councillor Somerville that the report be received. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Delegations. We do not have any, so now we are on item 10.1, consent agenda. I'll just read out the ones that have been initialed to be pulled. 10.2.2, which is the snow plowing, sanding parking lots of sidewalks, a tender. 10.2.3, core service review, winter maintenance policy, the one that was just reported on. 10.2.7, the IT strategy. 10.3.5, library maintenance of gardens. 10.3.6, Dufferin Caledon MOE report. And 10.3.7, which is wildlife damage compensation. Are there any other reports, Councillor Back?
Thank you. Through the Mayor, 10.2.5 and 10.2.13.
What was the last one? 10.2.12? 13. That's the purchase of a tank. Councillor Kett? Yep, that's record retention policy. Any other reports? Okay. So this includes all the correspondence, so I just want to now need a mover for the remaining items that have not been pulled to be passed the consent agenda, be approved. Councillor Guido. Any questions or final polls? I just want to make sure we grab it. All right, all those in favor? Carried. First item, 10.2.2, Councillor Guido, snow plow and sanding parking lots.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And a question to Director Coleman. I'm just curious, for the contracted snow plowing and for parking lots, did we add or reduce any from last year, or was this RFP tendered at the current volume or number of parking lots that we do?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, it is the same number of parking lots that we did last year.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions on the report? All right, 10.2.2. I've got this one here, right? So Councillor Somerville's moved that as recommended. Any questions on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Next item is 10.2.3, Councillor Guido.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I pulled that prior to the presentation done by Ms. Coleman.
Okay. So moved by Councillors, any other questions on that? So moved by Councillor Somerville as recommended. Any questions on that? All those in favor? Carried. Next item, 10.2.5, which is Councillor Back has pulled delegated authorities to summer recess.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, I have a question for our clerk. On page 43 on the conclusion, where it states that, let me just find this, where the clerk will be reviewing the township's year-round delegation of authority by law to ensure it maximizes efficiencies while providing a proper accountability and transparency measures. So when is that coming to, and how that council would be comfortable with, when is that report coming to council, and what is in there currently? Can you give an example of what is delegated to staff year-round authority in that bylaw? I'd like to know, because I didn't know that there were some authorities, unless it's something like a director approving under 10,000 spending.
Yes, the Director, Corporate Services, and then I might get Mr. Allure just to add anything that you may need added.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to the councillor. That report is due to part of my work plan for this year, so I hope to have that done before the end of the year. I can tell you that I haven't started that review yet, so I can't tell you like I can't even think of anything that might change at this point. I know there's some things certainly, you can see in by that report, the Summer Delegation of Authorities, some of those things possibly could be looked at and reviewed, but, excuse me, like I said, I haven't started that review yet, so I don't really have an answer for you in terms of what might change. In terms of what's delegated now, I can certainly provide you that bylaw. There's a number of things. This report obviously outlines some of them that are in there, so those items that are listed in that report, actually, you can see what is currently in there and what's changed. So you have a bit of an example for those there, but there are a number of other things that I can certainly provide you the bylaw if you wish.
Thank you.
Mr. Lawyer, did you want to add here? Okay. All right, Councillor Back, is that good? Any other questions on that? Okay, I need a mover for that report. Councillor Guido, any questions on that? It'll be received, it's only received. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next item is 10.2.6 Records Management Retention Policy. Councillor Cat.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd actually like to put 10.2.6 and 10.2.7 together because there's far too much information for us to go over in a couple of days, and before this, so I'd like to defer that to the next, and maybe have the ability to get some questions answered.
So Councillor Katz, you're wanting to put a motion to defer for those two policies, so 10.2.6, so because they're separate motions, we'll deal with them separately, but did you want to ask any questions, or is there anything of particular of the author of the reports? Because I don't know what ramifications it has on a deferral, which I'd be curious to know if it matters. I'd want to know if it makes any significant difference to the authors of the report, if there's a deadline specifically for this or a requirement for it. So I know the IT strategy, for example, was required for is required for insurance purposes by the regional insurance pool. So as far as dealing with the first one with records retention, maybe ask Mr. Newman to comment on it. Did you have any comments on just for deferral before we motion to defer? Just make sure procedurally they're on there when a motion defers are there to speak about it.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Council. The records management policy is a policy that we had our summer student develop over the summer in the Corporate Services Department. It's a policy that we should have already had. We didn't have. We sort of identified that as a gap, and we've trying to rectify that now. It's a fairly standard policy. You see that type of policy among municipalities all over the province. With regards to the records retention piece of that report, we get a update from Tom Rims, which is the Ontario Municipal Records Management System annually, and that when we get those updates, we just need to make those amendments to the bylaw, which is that piece. So again, those are minimum standards that we want for our records retention. I couldn't see. I'd question why council would want to change those records retention minimum retention periods. Those are, standard across Ontario again, and this is the records management system that provinces across Ontario use again. So that one there is a fairly standard policy, and certainly the bylaw is just updating what we already have with regards to the updates that we received from Tom Rins. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I know that at Regional Council we've dealt with the same records retention updates that happen, so I know the report is long, but I went through all the different things. I didn't see anything that jumped out as a concern, and I just wonder what the purpose is referring it, and if there's any questions that you didn't get answered when the agenda was released, or just enlighten us.
Well, I'm just saying that when the agenda is released, we have a lot of reading to do, and this is a policy that's being made for us, and I would like to basically have a classroom or an education system around it to educate us on what this is about and why is it so familiar to every other municipality, and why does it have to be, stuck in like this? I'm just saying that lately, we've been getting a lot of policy changes and that put through to us, and I just don't want to be jumping on something that I'm not sure of and voting for something that I'm not sure of, and I'd like to have it explained to me. And I'm not sure if everybody else in council would or not, but to me, I would. And there may be nothing there that's even worth talking about, but I would like that explained to me.
Okay, so the answer you got wasn't satisfactory from the director, the clerk point of view? So you want more of an in-depth...
I want a classroom or an education system to go through. I mean, that's, if anybody's interested, then we should have this. Right? I mean, we can't, I can't just approve things because somebody said that everybody else does it.
No, nobody's asking you to approve anything you're not comfortable with or support anything you're not comfortable with. So I guess this may be your first exposure to seeing that where we've seen it at other councils are part of. So is there any effect that it happens in the day-to-day of this, if it was to receive support for deferral?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, the legislation actually changed with regards to records management as well, and I should have mentioned that the first time I had an opportunity to speak. Bill 68 changed the Municipal Freedom, Information Protection and Privacy Act, so we now don't have an option to have a records management policy. It is legislated that we put in place written policies and procedures that deal with records management. So we don't have that option anymore. So I would be, I wouldn't suggest that this be delayed for any extended period of time. Right now, we're not in accordance with the legislation, so I think that's a huge gap in our system, and obviously something that we've identified and brought it forward. So I wouldn't suggest putting this off any number of months or anything if that's the intention. This is something that we should have already had, we didn't have. Now the legislation makes it a priority and a requirement. I would strongly suggest that certainly not pass anything that you're not comfortable with, but certainly this needs to be done sooner rather than later.
My point of view on it is that, not an education session, but this is GP&A. You have until council meeting next week if there's anything that you want to review. It's 2 weeks? Sorry, council's in 2 weeks, so there's 2 weeks from now, GPA, until it actually receives ratification. So I just don't want to back burner items. There's enough workload that's being done, and like many other gaps that we've discovered and staff have been plugging and bridging the gaps, I think this is just one more thing that we can say that has been filled. So I understand if you're not comfortable with it, this is the first time you've seen it, I haven't had time, but there are still 2 weeks from today.
Well, I mean that's not my point. My point is it's being brought forward, and even after the expedition, there was a new bill that was just brought out. So all I'm saying is that if we deferred it to the next GP&A, and then even if the clerk doesn't want to perform an education system for anybody, situation for anybody that's interested, then so be it. But the people that are interested and want to know the difference can do that.
I would suggest that the clerk is very willing to inform any councillor and answer any questions that would have been brought forward to him. So I would just look to the clerk to see if from now until the council meeting, if there'll be time that you would make sure was set aside to answer any questions that may come up.
Through you, Mayor, that's an easy question, absolutely. I am more than happy to, and I am always available.
Okay, and Mr. CEO, did you have to add anything to?
To you, Your Worship, just that I think the clerk has said it, very much are available to answer any questions that council have on any report, and as especially this one. I do appreciate the length of the document. It is a gap, as what's been said, and between now and the next meeting, I encourage Councilor Cat or any council member to reach out to the clerk. Any questions you may have, we'd be pleased to answer those questions and take any thoughts that they may have about the policy. Thank you.
Councilor Cat, do you have any other questions before we deal with your deferral motion?
No.
So, motion to defer moved by Councilor Cat. We're just dealing with the first item, which is records management and retention policy. Time and place, you're saying next GP&A meeting? I don't have the exact date. October 2nd. Any questions on clarification on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Lost. So it is not deferred, so now we're dealing with the policy there, recommendations. I need a actual mover for the report that's there, moved by Councilor Drew. Questions on the report? Councilor Drew?
I just wanted to say that it's evident throughout the whole report that there's some urgency in dealing with this situation. We don't want to be in a position where we don't have any IT services and lose our memories. So I would hope that this motion would pass today.
Just to clarify, this is the records retention that we're dealing with only, not the IT is the next one. Are you still moving the report that it's?
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay. Questions on the records retention? All right. Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Next item is the IT strategy. Councilor Kett, you indicated you wanted to defer that motion? Or defer for the same reasons? Is that
For the recommendation.
IT strategy review?
Yes, I'm not sure what it's all about. I mean, it's confidential.
Okay, just, we have,
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what this means, and I'd like it explained.
okay. So we have, Adam Zabecki here, our manager of IT, who authored the report, as well as J.P. Newman, Director of Corporate Services. Just give some background on the urgency for the report, if you could. If you want to start off, or you want to give it to Adam. I just want to make sure that everybody knows about the insurance requirement.
Sure, I'll just start off. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just start quickly. So, as everyone's aware, we hired a manager of IT, Adam, who's with us here today. Since he's arrived, he's done a full infrastructure review of our IT infrastructure and has found significant gaps, and you can obviously see that identified within the report. So, a part of the process and certainly a part of hiring Adam was to create an IT strategy, which he has created. Within that strategy, has identified several risks to our IT infrastructure, and we're just looking to correct those risks. So in terms of the technical side of things, I'll 100% leave that to Adam, so if you have any technical questions, but I'll leave it to Adam, if Mr. Mayor, if he would like to add anything.
Yes, Adam.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillors. Like 10.2.6, there's significant gaps in our IT policies. There's a number of standard policies that just simply weren't in place. It's nothing intrusive. It is a lot of standard policies across government and corporations that basically just say, don't visit porn sites on work devices. Like, it's stuff that really shouldn't have to be said, but it needs to be, put down in policies. And these policies were also a requirement to get our, I think it was just cyber insurance. And so that is sort of tentatively approved, but we actually have to pass these policies in order to, officially get our insurance. A few other parts of the strategy, like JP mentioned, there's significant gaps in the actual hardware and software that we are running. One of the core devices is kind of on the brink of failing, and if this device goes down, it's very expensive, long-term downtime for everyone in the office. And so it is critical that everything gets approved so we can get this device replaced before something happens.
But just ask Diane to add to it just the clarification on the funding source and the risk mitigation available funds.
Sure. Through our insurance this year, we've received a dividend back because the Durham Municipal Insurance Pool has been doing such a good job in mitigating risk. They've dividended back, I think it was about $4.2 million to the various members of the board. The Township of Tulog is going to receive $186,000, which would typically go into our self-insurance loss reserve. But I think that we have sufficient funding there, and I think that this IT structure is very important to the municipality to ensure that we don't have downtime. So through that dividend that we're receiving, that's in my report today, I would assume that the device, the infrastructure that's required by IT, the funding source, the funding can come from that dividend that we received, so it was kind of found money to us, but it will help with our infrastructure and IT.
So, and I know, Councillor Cat, you had talked about deferral of it, but my view on this is it's critical to have this enacted and updated. This has been a long time coming to have our IT infrastructure enhanced to be more efficient. I mean, the report and lead-up report outlines many of the gaps and deficiencies that are there. Again, there's still 2 weeks from when this gets passed till it receives ratification at a council meeting. I think the report is excellent, well-written. All those involved with it, I think this is great. I think we're head and shoulders above so many other municipalities that are lacking this kind of report. Obviously, there are other municipalities that didn't have it because they didn't have a policy in place, because many of them may contract out the services much like we had been, and now that we've internalized this IT department, we're now seeing the benefits of this. So I think this is a fantastic report, and I would like to not see this deferred. So, Councillor Cat, is there anything else that you'd like to ask or clarify?
I can understand that it's written well, but I just don't want to have any surprises that all of a sudden come in, and that's what my whole issue is here. So if Adam says that we need it right now, and he says that there's no real concerns, I don't want to have something could turn around and bite me 4 weeks from now because, wait a minute, we just approved something else. So that's all I'm saying here. And it's a huge number of pages that I believe should be explained, so.
Well, Councillor Guido?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 2 points. One is policy related, but the other is, while we do have Adam here, in section 9, the proposed work plan and timeline, in page 159 of our agendas, could we not afford 10 minutes now, and Adam can go through each section in there in the work plan to explain? Not everybody comes from a technical background, but if there's some explanation put behind, for example, the replacement of the sand, some of us understand what that means, some of us don't. So if Adam could take the time now to explain what is included in that area, where the funding's coming from for those areas, perhaps that will be helpful. And my second point is directed to Adam. Whenever this does go through, be it today or the next GP&A, in the actual policy statement, or policy, it refers to, in the beginning, it refers to members of council and the employees, but then further on in the policy, when referring to not going on sites, as you mentioned before, it only lists employees. So perhaps somewhere in the index, you can state in your policy that when you refer to employees, it means employees and council, because right now, if I'm reading it, it's saying employees aren't allowed to do that, but as a member of council, there's no repercussions for that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, definitely my intention was for employees and councillors and elected officials across the board, so we can definitely update that to make sure it's clear.
And Councillor Katz, based on the suggestion of, since we have Adam here to answer some of the questions there, I've answered a lot of the questions that I've had here to great satisfaction, so to myself, and I'm assuming you do the same when you get the agenda, you write down the questions you have, and then you use this. If you haven't had a chance to have them answered before the meeting, then now's the time to get them answered before you vote on it, so you're comfortable with having answers to your questions before we vote.
As Councillor Guido alluded to, is the fact that I'm not as tech-savvy as a lot of people, and so I don't know if I have questions or not. So my question to Adam would be, what in here would concern me?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. Most of this is back-end stuff that you will probably never see, but it's crucial to keeping everything running and keeping everything running at an appropriate speed.
So, back-end?
Yeah, most of it is...
No, I mean, you're saying back-end. I have no idea what back-end is.
Sorry. So when I say back-end, I mean like our hub room down in the basement. So it's all the hardware that's in there. So you never see it, you never work with it, but it is running everything that you do. So when you log onto the computer, when you're sending an email, that's all running out of that hub room. The only item that will affect you directly is the workstation modernization, which is a complete replacement of the computer that you're going to work on. So I can, off the top of my head, I don't know the official name of the little room where there's a couple of stations set up.
Councillor office, yeah.
So the little computer that's sitting beside the monitor, that's just going to be changed out, and it's going to slightly affect how you're going to log on. But for that project, I'm intending to have a little education session closer to when that is actually going to be rolling out, which is sometime in 2018, hopefully.
So when I was reading all about these passwords and things like that, that's what you're speaking about?
So as far as the policies go, the password will affect you. It's not a major change. It's just, as of right now, there's no expiry, so you can use the same password forever, which is against all best practices for security. So the new change is actually, it's still fairly lax, but it'll be a minimum of one password change a year. So once a year, you'll need to just select a new password.
You can keep going.
Okay. So,
You can keep going.
You have more questions? Yeah.
No, I mean, Adam was in the middle of his explanation, so of everything.
Should I go top to bottom?
Yeah.
The whole...
Yeah, you might as well then do if Councillor Kett is okay to park the motion, defer to get answers to this, I would much rather do that than have this go back and come back. So go ahead, Mr. DeBecke.
Thank you. So we'll start with the top, which is the replacement SAN. The SAN, or the Storage Area Network, is the central device that stores all of the data. Just to kind of break up what we have in our hub room is we have our servers, which are the computers. They compute, they process everything. We have the SAN, which is the storage. It just stores all of our data. And then we have networking equipment, which is basically the bridge between the servers and the computers that everyone works on. The Storage Area Network, our current one is in a very critical state. We've already had downtime in the 3 months or so that I've been here because of this device, and it's in a position to have more cascading failures. So it is very critical that this device just be replaced.
Okay, so you're speaking about the SAN, is that right? Okay.
Yep.
And the backup is the next one, right? So my question about the backup is how often do we back up, and how critical or what kind of condition is it in, that storage?
So right now, the backup is an outsourced solution. So GDL, Dan was with GDL, so with that managed service provider, we have a contract where they're managing our backup for $2,250 a month. So it is a high cost, but it is completely hands-off as far as I'm concerned. I don't even get access to it. I can't see it. So as part of one of these projects is we're going to bring that in-house. I'm going to develop a new system, install it myself, run it myself. And with that one, we'll be having backups run. It really depends on the data. For email, I'll be backing up as quickly as every 5 minutes. Currently, we're only backing up once a day, and that's it. So if something happens, we'll have upwards of 24 hours of data loss, which is the main reason why that system is on there. A huge plus to replacing the system and bringing it in-house is we were actually going to be saving close to $110,000 over 5 years.
Okay, so my question to that would be, is that best practices to have it in-house? And who will have access to it?
Just me, JP, probably just in case, as a backup. But best practices is to have in-house, just so at all times we are in control of our own data, especially in a municipality that is extremely important.
Just to clarify that, is there a mirror off-site that this is being, of the backups?
Yes, that is correct. It will be off-site at a data center, which is replicated across Canada. The data will stay in Canada. It will never go to the U.S., will never go to Europe. So if the building burns down, we'll always have a copy of our data.
Is that like Azure or AWS or Microsoft? Is that part of that monthly service that for the backups, right? It would be the off-site mirroring.
Yes, that's correct. So the plan is to go with Amazon S3 for our off-site storage, which is the largest.
Is that the one in Montreal? Yeah.
I believe, yeah, that's where their Central Canada location is.
And then you might as well continue to highlight the items there that you started with, because I don't think you hit on everything, did you?
No, not yet. So, just quick overview. So for the SAN, that device is 5 years old, which is typically the maximum age any device should be. And it's hit that mark. It's already had failures. So that's why it's, at the highest. For the core infrastructure resiliency upgrade, the entire network infrastructure is between, I believe, between 5 and 7 years old, depending on the devices. Nothing's newer than 5 years. And it is unable to keep up with our requirements. Everyone has seen the issues trying to log in, spend 40 minutes, and then it doesn't load, so you restart and you log back in, and then it takes another 20 minutes. The goal of this is to resolve that issue. As well as I would touch on with the backup system, more control, more backups, just getting more in line with best practices. The modernized workstations, I'm sure everyone can agree that the thin clients that everyone's working on is not ideal. My goal is to go from a 20-minute boot up to a 20-second boot up. So that would be a very nice change for everyone. It's also, part of that project is to protect our assets, because right now with our thin clients, they are not the cheapest devices, but they're not properly protected. A number of them have already died from power surges and similar sort of events. And along with buying these new computers, there's also going to be devices called uninterruptible power supplies, which keep the devices powered through power loss and provide excellent surge suppression, so the devices will not get damaged when there's power fluctuations. Moving down the list to the server infrastructure overhaul. So the servers, which are the computing side of our hub room, they're again about 5 years old, and Well, we haven't quite hit their cap as far as resources go, so we are not bottlenecked by them. Because they're hitting that 5-year mark, they're going into a phase of their life cycle where critical failures are more likely. And while if one of those devices goes down, it is not as it's not as big as an issue as the SAN going down, but it is a day or two of downtime. There's some work to get everything moved to where it can be running again. So it's also a little bit of Russian roulette where you're not sure. Like if one device goes down, we might lose email. If another one goes down, we might lose Laserfiche. It's just something that needs to be done. Down the list again to the Wi-Fi overhaul. This is something that is not 100% critical for the municipal office. It is more of a quality of life fix to make sure everyone has Wi-Fi. I know there's some offices on this top floor that just don't have Wi-Fi, and this is going to solve that. So there's going to be 100% access anywhere anyone goes in this building. For the fire hall, it is a lot more critical, as that is now the designated emergency response center, and they do not have the capacity to handle the number of devices that will be there. I wasn't here for the last exercise, but from what I understand, there were a number of issues. So this rollout will prevent any of these issues from happening in the future. Next item on the list is the migrate email to Office 365. Again, this is a quality of life and a best practice for a corporation of this size. It is very easy to move email from in-house to the cloud. It provides better access to everyone, so whether you're on phones, at home, no matter where you are, you will always have access. And people will always be able to send you an email. If the internet went down to this building today, well, you may be able to get your emails from inside the office. No one would be able to send an email in. They'll get an error back, and the email won't go anywhere. You won't be able to get that email once the connections go back up. So it's definitely a gap that needs to be filled. Next down the list is the Opportunity Cloud Migrations and Contract Efficiency Review. Now this one's a little bit vague on purpose, but the gist of it is we have a number of contracts that have never been consolidated or reviewed, and the idea behind this one is that it needs to be. Printers, for example, we have the Arena has their own contract, the Town Hall has a contract for a number of printers, and I know by consolidating and using my industry knowledge of these devices, we can definitely save quite a bit of costs for that one in particular. Next one down the list for the internet speed increase. So this goes across the board, across the township, at all locations. The fire hall in particular has dangerously inefficient or under-allocated internet connection, especially as the designated emergency response center. The actual rated amount is 5 megs up, 5 megs down, which may not mean a lot, but it is dangerously slow. If you have 3 or more people on a connection like that, it's already slow enough that, loading an email will take longer than it should. So in an emergency situation, you can't really have that. For the main municipal office here, for the number of users that we have, our internet connection is just a little bit slow. And for some of the other locations, like the Caesarea Fire Hall, they don't have internet right now, and they really should have something. Next one down for the power protection deployment. Like I mentioned with the workstation modernization, this just rolls it out to all IT assets across the township. Everything needs to have proper surge protection, uninterruptible power supplies, the whole deal. Because right now, if there's a major surge, one of the printers might die. And that is I'm not sure how much of these devices cost off the top of my head, but that is a large device to just have die because of a simple power surge. Last item on the list is the Town Hall card access control upgrade. And so this has to do with the key cards that everyone uses to enter the building, as well as the security cameras. Now, the system that is in place today, I have no idea when it was implemented, but it is definitely over 5 years old. So it is well past that benchmark for replacement, and there's many gaps in it. For example, the security camera that faces the front door doesn't really face the front door, so we can't actually get a view of anyone that walks in the front door. We may get a side of their face, if we're lucky. So this system will install new cameras. They're HD, full night vision, so we can see at night. And it'll bring it up, again, to best practices and proper security standards. It'll be adding a number of new card readers across the building. Just, again, filling in gaps where we still have physical keys, because best practice is to remove as many keys as possible. So for physical keys, it's easy to copy them. Really, only 1 or 2 people in a building should have it. Everyone else should be just a digital key card, which is easily controlled and trackable.
Okay, thank you for that update. And Councillor Back has a question that she was wanting to get answered at the beginning of that, and I'll go back to you, Councillor Kent.
Actually, I have a few. Thank you, through the mayor. So the first one, what is a thin client versus a fat client? What is that? What does that mean?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So a thin client basically is, it is a very simple computer. It doesn't have a lot of power in and of itself. All it does is basically allow you to connect to a more powerful computer, which we have in our hub room. And that setup was popular in the 90s because it was easier to manage. But in this day and age, with computers as cheap as they are, there's no reason to have it. So the best way I can quickly explain it is, so like I said, it's a simple box, and you connect to a main server. So when we have 30 people connected, there's 30 people running on one box, and each of those desktops, like we have up here, is just streamed out to to the thin client. Now a fat client is, it's any old computer. Like my laptop here is a fat client. If you buy a computer you have at home, that's a fat client. It is just a basic computer where everything runs on the box itself. Nothing is being sent out to run anywhere else. It's all local. That also means, so if we have an outage and the server goes down, everyone can still work, which if that happens today, that wouldn't be the case.
Okay, and if I may, with regards to the migrate email to Office 365 to the cloud, will there be an opportunity for staff and for council members to be shown how to do that? Those that don't know how, and how would that look?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. Definitely. There shouldn't be any impact to any of the users. But if there is any need, then, I mean, I'm always open. I'm happy to answer any questions about anything, policies, absolutely anything. But as far as that migration specifically, the way it's planned out to happen is the actual work is going to be done over a weekend, and then all of the users are going to come in Monday morning, fire up their computers, and it's just going to be done. There should be no impact. Like, as far as a day-to-day use, the users shouldn't even notice.
Okay, because I'm a bit of a dinosaur in that I've got that age gap, where there's some people my age, like the mayor, that's very technical, and then there's people like me who are sort of lost in space, so to speak, with the cloud. I have no concept of what the cloud is. I know it's on our monitors now. I always bypass it to go back to the old-fashioned way, because that's
how I know how to do it, and I'm sure there's other people that are in the same boat. Will we have an opportunity to use best use of your time to have perhaps a session with those that want to learn, or is it when we have this conversion, it's going to just be like our normal email and somehow we're modernized into the cloud and we don't even know how the heck we got to the cloud? Like, I don't understand the concept of the cloud. So, and I'm sure I'm not the only person.
So Adam is going to do the migration, and it's the same software that you use now is the Office 365. I've gone through conversions. You won't notice a difference. It'll be just done and maybe a password reset or something on the computer.
And so if I want to access the cloud somewhere else, it just happens magically, or I have to learn how to do that? That's what
I'm just speaking from my experience to make sure. It's no different. It's exactly the same software. It's just housed through Microsoft servers versus ours.
Okay, I really, I don't think I'm the only person that is not so tech savvy, but I just don't want to misuse your time and go one-on-one if there could be of showing more than one person at a time what they're doing, or if there's just to get them up to snuff.
If there's a need, I will definitely have a session. But like it's been mentioned, the goal is that there would be no impact. So you open up your computer, you'd log in, you'd open up Outlook, and your email is just there. You wouldn't notice any difference. Like, it's all going to be there. You won't have to configure anything. There's no like special website you have to go through or anything like that. It's just going to work, and it's going to work everywhere. Is the goal.
Okay, and bear with me, I have two more.
Mr. Newman's just going to add something there, just.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to all of council. In my time here, I have had some complaints from council members specifically that said their emails are not, getting to them and things of that nature. They're not going out and not coming in. This will solve all those issues as well. So again, it's another one of those improvements that hopefully that'll stop that occurring. So again, it's just one of those improvement things.
Great. And with regards to the replacing existing workstations, that does include our little council room?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor? Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It's all thin clients. My goal is to replace all thin clients with fat clients, and then just to have a couple of thin clients just on the side in case, something explodes and someone needs a computer right now.
Okay, and one more, and I don't know if it's with regards to this particular report or the one prior, so forgive me if it was. What happens if by chance one of us inadvertently breaches some sort of the policy? How will that be handled with regards to council? Is it front page news in the newspaper? Is it done just yourself with the councillor to say, hey, I've noticed something in this per section of a policy, perhaps you may want to choose to not do this again, or how is this going to be dealt with if, and I'm not saying porn sites, but I'm just saying if, with regards to any of that policy, because there's a lot of stuff in here, if you inadvertently breach something, how is that going to be handled with regards, because I know with regards to staff and how council is dealt with, sometimes it's two different levels of transparency.
JP will answer that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to the councillor. It really depends on the breach. So if you're thinking of, say, the records management policy, if there is a data breach from some of our data and it goes public that shouldn't have gone public, I have reporting requirements to the IPC. So that would be that situation. So there would be a data breach, protocol I'd have to follow, and we'd report it that way. For the most part, through our IT infrastructure, we block the sites you're not meant to be on. So if you happen to come across that site, hopefully not on purpose, but if you happen to come across that site, it'd just be given to Adam to remedy that, because most of those sites, I know that through our firewall, I believe it is, we block already all those adult sites, gambling sites and things like that. So that's already blocked already. So the hope is you can't get to those sites anyway if you accidentally do it, let us know and we simply correct it. But with any, council, issue that may arise not following a policy, it would be brought up with the mayor and decided from there how to go. But in terms of accessing certain things, we hope that we have blocked most things anyway.
Councillor Cat, did you have further questions? Go back.
Yeah, thank you. The card access, is that going to be for in and out?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor? No, so it's just as it is right now. It is just in. There are systems that exist where you have to buzz in and out, and it's not necessary for our needs. So just as it is today, if you want to come in, you buzz or you tap your card and you go in, and on the way out, you just hit the crash bar, same as usual.
But it could be informative to have an out one as well.
It could be. It is extremely cost prohibitive, though. It is a type of specialty sensor that goes along with that type of system, and it is significantly more expensive than the system that we have selected.
And so what portion of that would be for the new card access, and what portion for the cameras?
So it is $14,000 for the cameras and $19,000 for the card access.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Drew?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the recommendations, we're recommending, or you are recommending, that we approve the policy, but you have some expenditures that you want to make, and one of them is from the reserve, insurance risk reserve. The other ones that are coming out of operating from core services and corporate services, corporate services and development services, are they, how is that recommendation in here as part of, I see you got attachment 1, I'm just trying to look up and see what attachment 1 is, and like, how do we go about making those purchases? I don't see it in the recommendation. Is it part of approved budgets?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, it is part of the approved budgets for anything that we're going to be spending in 2013, with the
17?
What did I say?
13.
2017. With the exception of the SAN, which will be coming from the self-insurance loss reserve.
Okay. And now I'll ask Diane, is this going to put us in a bad position at the end of the year, or can we get it well within our budgets?
To you, Mr. Mayor. All of the items identified, with the exception of the SAN, have already been budgeted. They're either in there is a capital project that was approved in 2016. Minimal spending has happened already. There's a town hall maintenance capital budget that went through last year where minimal spending has been approved. So the only exception is the urgency of the SAN, which we have the dividend that's come through from the insurance pool of $186,000, and I think IT requires about $30,000 of that. So no, should not put us in any difficult situation.
Thank you. So the reason for my asking is I'm presuming that in the operating budget there was a blanket IT budget. Is that correct? And these things, because these things that are identified now have just been identified, so they wouldn't have been identified as such in the operating budget. So it was just a blanket IT upgrades and an amount. Is that correct?
Mr. Newman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to the councillor. Because it's my budget, I'll just answer if you don't mind. There was a hardware expense line within my budget. I believe that some of this work was identified by my predecessor in terms of moving away from thin clients and things like that. So we're just now, because we have Adam on board, identifying what exactly it is we need. So the 2017 items, you're noticing it's not in the recommendation. They don't specifically need approval. We're just identifying them for council for information. This is what we're doing. This is sort of how we're spending that money with it. So it's all within approved budgets. As Diane had mentioned, the SAN is a different fund, so we asked for approval to use that money out of that fund. And then there's the two items, the modernizing the workstations and the server infrastructure overhaul, a piece of that does not fit within our budget for 2017, and that's where we're going to request that through the capital budget process. So those two items you'll see in the capital budget process, and obviously we've already advised the treasurer of that, and we'll bring forward that during the budget process, and then, upon that being approved, then we'll obviously implement those solutions in 2018. But yes, the 2017 items are all within budget right now.
Just one other question. There are some items here that you haven't got a dollar figure for, probably because you don't have an estimate at this point. Do we feel confident that we could still purchase those within the budget?
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. Those items essentially just be looked at. They were items that would not fit in this 2017 budget. So they're not items that we will complete in 2017, but they are items on our radar to look at and look for solutions for. As Adam identified, we have contracts, unfortunately, multiple contracts for the same sort of items, printers being one, at 3 different locations within the municipality. We know for sure that if we can amalgamate those contracts, we'll see some cost savings. Not something that we've identified in 2017 to spend any money, and to be quite honest, that'll actually reduce our expenditure that we already have, so you likely won't even see it as a request from us, because it'll just be a reduction in that line item. We'll go from this amount to a lower amount. So those are those items, and I think that's the two to be determined ones. Thank you.
Other questions? Councillor Kett, did you get your questions answered then?
I got a lot of them. I didn't even have questions until now. Now I've got questions. But as much as I could do right now, that's fine.
All right, so
They're answered.
I prefer, we need a mover for the recommendations here. Councillor... So yeah, just to clarify, I took that as Councillor Kett, you're withdrawing the motion to defer?
I'll withdraw.
Okay, so are you moving it then, the recommendations, or you want?
Yes, I'll move.
Okay, so Councillor Kett moved the recommendations. Any questions on that? All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Thank you very much, Adam. I feel that the staff are going to be kissing and hugging you after all this gets implemented, so looking forward to the changes as they're implemented. Next item we have is Councillor Back with 10.2.13, purchase of tanker truck.
Yes, thank you. Through the mayor, and perhaps the chief can clarify for me, because I'm a little confused with regards to where it states National Fire Protection Association recommends fire departments should consider apparatus more than 15 years old, should put in reserve, and that over 25-year-old be replaced. Am I correct in reading this that what we're purchasing for $300,000 is already 27 years old?
Through you, sir.
Ma'am.
It's been a long summer. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, we're replacing a truck that's 27 years old.
With what?
With
age?
With the purchase of this truck here.
What age is that truck? Because the way I read it, it looked like it's 1990 and 94.
The truck we are replacing is a 1990.
No, what's the new one?
With a brand new one.
Oh, brand new.
Yes.
Okay, because all right, because I just, I sort of balked and thought, why for $300,000 are we buying something that should be put out to pasture? Okay. That's all that matters. Thank you.
Any other questions, Councillor Kett? No? All right, Councillor Back, you moved the report then? Moved by Councillor Back. Any final questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Next item is 10... Councillor Kett?
Yes, I know that we've approved this, it's 10 to 10 for the grain elevator. I just wanted to be assured that all of this has gone through the Heritage Committee. Like, that's what we said before summer, and I just...
Yes, you're right, it has been approved in consent agenda. Mr. Heritage, do you have an answer to Councillor Ket's?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, this item actually went to EDAC and was discussed at the EDAC meeting.
Okay. So Councillor Ket, your...
Well, my point is that before we recessed, that was a stipulation on the part of the summer agenda, is that it went to Heritage, and I thought maybe I'd missed it, but now I see that maybe I haven't, but I'm not quite sure why DEAC has anything to do with it, but I'm sure that since it's in the HCD, that it should have gone there. So should that not be brought to the Heritage Committee?
Mr. Heritage?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, the deadline date for the submissions was June 30th of 2017. The last meeting of the Heritage Committee was June 20th or 21st. They haven't, as of that date, met yet, and staff reviewed the submissions, and we're in a position to award during the summer recess to get the process underway. We can bring that item forward to the Heritage Committee should council wish staff to do so.
Mr. Allor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think what's probably most important here, and as I recall the conversation, is that during the design process, of course, the Heritage Committee would be consulted and would be part of the one of the stakeholders and that would be involved in the design of the square. There's been no start of the project yet, and I would anticipate that, that committee would be involved during that process. Would that be correct, Mr. Heritage?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Allor.
So this was just the award of the tender, it's not, hasn't started yet, right?
I just have a hard time awarding tenders if they don't know what to do. But I'm satisfied if the Director of Heritage says that it's going to the Heritage Committee for and I imagine that the new awarded designer will go to the Heritage Committee as soon as possible. Great. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, that, as Mr. Allor indicated, that is part of the process, that both EDAC as well as other committees will be involved throughout the study process. So the consultants will be attending a Heritage Committee meeting.
Okay. Okay, next, 10.2, 10.3.5, library maintenance of gardens, Councillor Guido.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this correspondence actually touches upon one of the budget line items I've suggested to our treasurer regarding the maintenance of most of our parks, specifically the waterfront, where it does seem to become overgrown. My question for this is, we are fortunate in our municipality to have a horticultural program at our high school. Is there any way that the township could enter into discussions with the high school to see if this is a project that they could assist with or help out with or take over? I'm sure we've got lots of areas for them to gain experience from. I'm not sure if this is something that we can do, being a unionized environment, but if the clerk or CAO could address their thoughts on this.
Do you want the clerk or the CAO or Director Coleman to weigh in?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. We haven't explored this in the past. We are doing something right now with some high school students. They have a program for students with special needs, and one of the students at the Fort Perry High School has an interest in landscaping. So we're actually going to be working with them through the fall, coming 2 times a week, I believe, for a couple hours at a time, and they come with a teaching assistant to help them. So we're doing a program with them right now, but longer term, the garden at the library is probably more than we can handle, even with some assistance from students. So staff have been working on a plan to reduce the size of the garden at the library to something that's manageable and can be maintained. So we're looking at taking some of it out and sodding and replanting some in the areas. We've got one cost estimate for that so far, but we can't fit it in our 2017 budget, so it's something we're looking at for the 2018 budget.
Have you considered reaching out to our, there's a garden club, Pine Ridge, I believe it's Pine Ridge Garden Club. Perhaps they would be able to offer some assistance to this as well?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have that I know of, but it's something we can do, yes, definitely.
Any other questions on that correspondence? Councillor Guido moving the correspondence. All those in favor? Carried. Next item is item 10.3.6. Councillor Cat. Pulled 10.3.6 MOE report on sewage bypass.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to make sure that we support and make direction to send a letter to the MPP, because we as well in Scugog have a dangerous situation with the emergency sewage dump that goes right into the beach right by Palmer Park. So it would be well worth knowing.
Yeah, that's, I mean, I would, is that something that is, I know that there's the Nonquan plant, which the region operates, which we just was recently reopened, a new vamped up,
No, there's in case there's an overflow, there's a drainage pipe. It hasn't been used actually, or in a few years, but it's still there and could be used. So I just think that we should support this.
I'd look at, because it's a letter of correspondence, MP, I read the, this private member's bill,
Right.
that's coming forward with it. So you're wanting to put in an endorsement motion, is that what you're saying, or notify, what is it that you want to do?
Yeah, no, I would just like to send her a letter of support and, for that, and, I guess pass that through our council.
Councillor Drew, did you have your hand up?
Actually, it's already been addressed. That pipe has been there for 30-odd years. It's never been used, but certainly, we do have to be cautious.
The recommendation is to receive or to support it, so I would support the recommendation.
Requesting support, yeah, so the recommendation was to receive for information. Am I've got two different things. All right. Yeah, so Councillor Cat, you're making a motion to support that?
Yeah, and send notification or correspondence back to them of our support.
Councillor Troop?
No, not on that, I haven't.
To do with the same item?
No.
Okay. All right, any other questions from the council? Just looking at staff to make sure that that motion that's just been put forward covers everything. Are there any concerns with that? Okay, so just for the benefit of Councillor Somerville who's coming in here, what do you have written down here? It's of course, but also I believe there was correspondence to be sent to. Okay, but you said to the MPP as well, to that particular MPP or to our MPP?
Both.
Okay. Our MPP Granville Anderson. So it's a motion to support and sending correspondence. Okay. Any questions on that? None. All those in favor? Carried. Next, Councillor Drew.
Thank you.
maybe you could clarify something for me. When we did the consent agenda, it was my understanding that the staff recommendation was for 10.3.1 and 2 to be received for information, and the rest of them were seeking support, and that was the, and I did not pull this because I approved the recommendation of staff to support those letters. So, if I'm in error, then I would like to pull out 10.3.3 from the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority and support their stand. So could you clarify the consent agenda on those items?
Three right there. Okay, so, my understanding that this is part of the consent agenda, that it would have been passed part of the consent agenda that was in there. Mr. Clerk, am I missing anything?
It is there, okay, yeah.
So it is,
Okay.
it has been
All right.
as recommended.
Thank you.
Okay. So, next item we have is 10.3.7, Councillor Kett.
Just the same, I'd like to send a letter of support and to the MPPs, our MPP, and support to the Oro Medonte.
Okay, because this is a letter of correspondence without any staff record, I just always want to make sure that we're not missing anything with our support. Staff has concerns. Mr. Lohr, is there anything that you have concerns with?
Your worship, was this 10.3.3 that was just,
No,
yours?
this is 10.3.7, I mean, sorry, 10,
Yes, 1037.
10.3.7, yeah.
Oro Medonte.
Your worship, I read this correspondence, and I think this is correspondence, of course, it does apply to more rural municipalities. I don't see any difficulty in supporting it. In fact, it's on the agenda for support.
Yeah, for seeking support, I know that it's on the agenda with receive for information because conversations with the clerk doesn't want to put in a receive for support. That's up to us as council to pull it and support it. So I understand why it's there as receive for information by default. And then if we want to support it, just as Councillor Kett's doing, to pull it and then make sure that it's support. So I just want to make sure there wasn't any other reason besides that.
No, that's right, Mr. Mayor. That's a change that we made, I believe, the beginning of this year as requested by council, that items that are seeking support be identified as such. However, the clerk is no longer going to suggest what council should support or should not support. So they go on as received, save and accept the 10.3.3, and it's up to council if they choose to support it or not. And they're just simply identified in that list, which are just seeking, which just can be received for information, or who are seeking support.
All right, so Councillor Kett moved the same supporting motion with correspondence to the MPs.
And the,
Minister.
so like Jeff Leal.
And
the
the
Honorable
Minister of
Jeff Leal.
Agricultural, Food, and Rural Affairs. Okay, any questions from the rest of the council? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Okay. All right, yes, I think we need a short break here, about 8 minutes. Not 9, 8 minutes. Thanks.
7.75 minutes. Just a little.
Okay, we will continue on. Item 11.1, the Integrity Commissioner report that is before him, page 229. I need a mover for the motion for it to be received. Moved by Councillor Somerville. Questions on that report? Councillor Somerville?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, one of my questions is, and I guess it would go to Diane. What's the cost, what was the cost that Mr. Gorneau for his report? Is anyone can...
I'm not, sorry through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Paul got the estimates.
Do you have another question? Well,
Yeah, I just have a little statement I just want to make. It's not much, it's just a little statement, that's all, with respect to this.
Mr. Lord, do you want a moment to... Okay, sure.
Okay, so can I make my statement? It's not a heck of a lot, it's just a little bit. And I just said that, if it's okay with you, Mr. Mayor?
I have a feeling that there's going to be some statements, so...
No, it's not bad statement, okay?
I just want to remind everybody to be cautious with any statements that they put forward, but obviously being professional and respectful in that, and what I do for one, I'll do for all.
This one is professional and respectful. It just said to avoid having to take complaints about council members directly to the Integrity Commissioner in the future. I ask that, as per our code of conduct, the complaint comes directly to council. Council will vet the complaint per our procedures, and council would decide at that point whether we should go on to an Integrity Commissioner. I looked at the cost of the first Integrity Commissioner versus the second Integrity Commissioner's cost. Reading Mr. Gorneau's report, his input was clear, specific, and detailed, and it was based on facts and not hearsay, while Mr. Elston's report was vague and very general. And in light of the costs, the municipality could certainly have used the money spent more wisely for the goods of the municipality in roads and sidewalk repair. And that's all I have to say. I just think that maybe this was a little over the top. I think from now on, I would request that when there's a complaint come in, and I'll reiterate what I just read, that when there's something comes in, I would like it to come directly to council. When there's a complaint about one of the councillors, to come directly to council, not to senior management, and senior management not make a choice as to who the Integrity Commissioner is. Well, we now have Mr. Gorneau, but I don't want that to happen again, because I think this was very, very costly. I'm not exactly sure what the cost was to the municipality. I think it was around $26,000 for Mr. Elston, and whatever Mr. Gorneau's is, I have no idea, but this money could have been spent much more wisely, I think.
Mr. Eller, do you have the number? Oh, I have an approximate. Do you have an approximate, Mr. Newman?
I have an approximate, Mr. Mayor, and it's in the $4,500 range.
That's $4,500 versus $26,000. That was really a lot, and there was like 42 pages from Mr. Gorneau. That was amazing report, and I really commend him for being so thorough and precise in everything that he wrote. Thank you.
Councilor Somerville, you touched on procedures and policies. Just for the benefit of the media here or public, the Integrity Commissioner, Guy Giorno, is our Integrity Commissioner now.
Exactly.
The previous one, we didn't have one. That being said, that going forward, there'll be the process. But I do have some other items I just want to say as well, too, but I would give the opportunity for other councillors if they want to speak to it, so.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Council, any questions? Councillor Drew?
Question on the statement and on the cost. Now, as you said, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Giorno, is that his name? Is now our Integrity Commissioner. He's retained by the region, and we just pay an hourly rate. So that's one reason why it's a lot cheaper. And I just had a question. When a member of the public has a complaint, do they make the determination if they want to go to the Integrity Commissioner? Or do they ask for advice, or what happens?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the councillor. It is up to the complainant, yes. So they can submit a formal complaint or not. It's really up to them. the complaint procedure within the Code of Conduct says if we receive a formal complaint, that it gets forwarded to the Integrity Commissioner, and that's what we follow.
Okay, so we don't really have choice on this matter. If somebody makes that kind of complaint, it goes to the
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to the council. Yes, if somebody makes a complaint against a member of council under our current Code of Conduct, that complaint gets forwarded to the Integrity Commissioner, yes.
Just to clarify too, or if you could clarify for me, that the Integrity Commissioner will do a overview and determination of whether a full investigation is required or not.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that is correct. So the Integrity Commissioner does vet the complaint and determine whether it requires an investigation or not, and he'll report on that fact.
Okay, so I just, Councillor Back?
I do have something after, thanks through the mayor, but just with regards to what was just said. My interpretation of our current Code of Conduct and procedures, if I can recall it, is that a complaint comes in and it initially goes to council, and council vets it and determines if they want to deal with this complaint, or if it's out of their realm, then they would choose to take it to the Integrity Commissioner. And at the point of 6 months ago, when we didn't have an appointed Integrity Commissioner, at that point, council then would have asked staff to make a report and tell us the available Integrity Commissioners, the Integrity Commissioners that would be available, give a few of them, what their hourly rates would be, and then council would choose. Now that we have one that's appointed, obviously you don't have to do that, but in our procedures for Code of Conduct, it clearly states the complaint is put in and it goes to council to discuss. And my case in point would be the Good Friday budget BIA illegal meeting Integrity Commission complaint that happened a year or so ago. That would have been easily dealt with if we had followed our procedures to come to council. Council looks at it and would have easily have known. 2 councillors were present. It was not a quorum for council. 3 board members of the BIA were present. It was not a quorum of the BIA board. That particular complaint would have been denied or addressed without bringing in a $6,000 Integrity Commission complaint investigation, which only took not much time if we followed our actual procedures. And to my knowledge, those procedures, regardless of the fact now we have an appointed Integrity Commissioner, there hasn't been an overhaul in that procedure. The complaint comes in, it should go to council, and council would look at it and determine if they wanted to bring it to our appointed Integrity Commissioner. That's how it's written.
Mr. Newman, Mr. Lohr, basically, this is what part of my summary is the ambiguity that we have. The Integrity Commissioner's report has identified gray areas, things that need to be tightened up. So part of what I was going to say was a couple things. One, the subject of the complaint, which was the press release. So my point of view is, irrespective of the opinion of the Integrity Commissioner with respect to council communications to the media, that as mayor it is my direction that all council media communications should flow through the mayor and the manager of communications and strategic initiatives as it was laid out and explained to us, clarified to us. So despite what the comments were on it being not clear, that we all had understood that this was the method of communicating to the press. As well, based on the report, it's imperative that we undertake an overhaul of our Code of Conduct and to make sure that, I ask that the clerk to carry out a fulsome review and update our current code, make it crystal clear our rules, roles, and responsibilities, expected behavior for upstanding conduct, as well the procedures for sharing news, items coming to council, decisions of council as a whole, so that we don't have this gap or open interpretation, which it needs to be clearly defined, black and white. We need to know the boundaries that we expect ourselves to operate within. And I would like to see this to be undertaken expedited, ideally before the end of the year. Councillor Drew?
I'd be happy to make that a motion. I would like to add that in the new code of conduct that's going to be developed, it be mentioned in there that councillors are expected to adhere to all of our policies and procedures, including our procedural bylaws.
Mr. Clerk, it was moved by Councillor...
Just 1 second, you need to deal with this one.
Oh, yes. So, okay, we have the motion that was moved by Councillor Somerville about the Integrity Commissioner's report. So, before we move forward on that, because this would be a motion following up to deal with the gaps or lack of clarity in our current code of conduct. So, this is just to do with the Integrity Commissioner's report that has been moved. Is there any more questions on that report? Yes, Councillor Guido.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure if this JP or our clerk would know. What was Elston's hourly rate versus our current? And there's a reason for my questioning on this.
Mr. Elson's rate was $250 per hour, where our current agreement is for $239 per hour.
So even though it is a region-appointed or a region, we're not receiving a large break on this. So there's still a large difference between a $26,000 report and a approximate $5,000 report. Personally, in reading this report, I found it to be based on facts and the depth of detail that this Integrity Commissioner went into in half the time that the other one for a significantly lower price. I would hope that going forward, they are clean and concise. And after reading this report and the views of this Integrity Commissioner, you do have to wonder if we would have a different outcome of the previous Integrity Commissioner's report. Thank you.
Any other? Councillor Kett?
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a couple of questions, and the first one is, why is this report being handled differently than Elston's report last March? Why is it at a GPNA meeting and not a council meeting like it was supposed to be?
Mr. Clerk, I don't want to speak for you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the council. The Code of Conduct requires that the report be placed on the next available agenda, and the next, in that case, was a council meeting. The next, in this case, was a GPNA meeting.
On which, when I read it, I read the next council meeting.
Yes, what is your question?
No, I'm saying that when I read, it says the next council meeting. So I would just want this put on the next council meeting as well.
So, do you have anything to add to it? I'm not sure if you're asking to have it show again. It is going to show in the next council meeting because it's going to...
It won't show again, as it'll be just part of the minutes of this. Okay, so I'd like to see this on the count, just to show that we're following procedure, because that's our procedure. I mean, I'd hate to not follow another procedure right after this.
Well, the clerk is bound by rules, and I'm sure that that he would be doing what's best in before the next council meeting if you're asking him to double check on that because of it being under a different set of rules or its own legislative requirements on it, and sure, the clerk would be happy to look into, double check to make sure that his procedure he follows is correct.
I think it's right in our code of conduct.
Oh, you're saying our code of conduct?
It's right in our code of conduct. It says it's going to be placed on the next council meeting. Exactly, that was the wording that I got when Elston was there.
And do you want to comment on it?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to the council. I believe it's the next meeting of council This here is a meeting of all of council, so it was placed on the very next agenda. I don't think, I strongly believe that the intent was not to hold the report back for a month while it's being, before it comes to council. So I interpreted it as the very next meeting of council, and this is a meeting of all members of council. No decision is obviously made. It will come forward to council for a ratification, but that is the interpretation. But again, as the mayor has pointed out, in terms of maybe this is an item that is a little bit ambiguous to obviously yourself, so it's something that we could certainly clarify in the update.
Yes, and I appreciate the fact that we wanted to bring this move it forward as quickly as possible. But when I read the procedures and it says the next council meeting, I read it as a council meeting that would be available for people at 6 o'clock at night. So I would request it's on the next council meeting.
So why don't we have the clerk look into that and clarify that for the next council meeting, because it's going to be on the agenda. You're just wanting the full report on the council meeting, but
yes,
because of the ambiguity, I would suggest that
I'm not sure about the ambiguity
of the procedural bylaw. You're saying, because it says next, I didn't read it, it was just handed over there, it was council.
Yeah.
Next council meeting, so, is there,
I'm just requesting that it be put on the next council meeting. I don't think it's that big of a deal, I'm just wanting to follow procedure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and that wouldn't be following our procedure, because items that are dealt with GP&A are not put on the council agenda. The procedure to be followed is that the recommendations from the GP&A would then go on the council meeting, so that's the proper procedure. So if you'd like to follow procedure, I would suggest that we do that.
yeah, I read it's submitted to council, so it doesn't say at what meeting. I mean, this is...
Just read a little bit farther.
So it says, no later than 90 days after making the complaint, outlines the findings and terms of any settlement or recommended correction action. It says, if the investigation is being conducted by Integrity Commissioner, an interim report may be submitted to council to address any instances of interference, obstruction, or retaliation encountered during the investigation. Final report on the complaint shall be submitted to council no later than 90 days after making the complaint, outlining the findings, terms of any settlement, or recommended corrective action. I read that as it comes to council. This is how we get our information to council. I would say that this is the correct procedure for it. But happily, the clerk's already suggested he would clarify that and make sure that, legislatively, if there's anything required to have it show up again, I think this is the exact format we would expect it to have.
Is that our approved one? I'm not sure.
Yep. Okay.
And, I guess I'd like to say a bit here too. So I'd like to do a little shout out to Todd Green of the Standard newspaper for his editorial last week on truth, and his quote, "The truth will always out." I'm very pleased with the outcome of this report, and the report speaks for itself. I especially like the comment about the original Integrity Commissioner's report, and I quote, "I find no evidence that Councillor Kett has acted in an intimidating, offensive, degrading, humiliating, and demeaning manner toward any individual. On the contrary, I find Councillor Kett's comments were focused on institutional accountability and were not personal." Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Back?
Thank you, through the mayor. And I just have a very short submission as well, so please bear with me. For the sake of the township and the taxpayers, this report is based on fact and not perception nor hearsay, and has provided a clear judgment and direction to council for the future. It reinforces our duty to ask the questions that are needed to ensure public accountability and transparency. However, there are still outstanding questions about the procedural path that was followed to initiate these inquiries, which begs the question, how do we prevent this from ever happening again?
You didn't say that right.
So just to comment on the, on going forward, the updating code of conduct is definitely a clarifying measure that we can do, that we have the power to do, and make sure that we are very clear and understand there's no ambiguity, and I think it's imperative that we get it done as soon as possible so that we don't have people interpreting it different ways, because will be a complaint. And also having an integrity commissioner now chosen and retained through the region, and will be cost. But I absolutely agree with you, the cost of integrity commissioner not being able to budget for something and being then given a report and then having to decide on it, that it's not fair for us, and we have process and procedures that need to be put in place to make sure we minimize the costs, and we don't want items coming through for the sake of disrupting what happens on a day-to-day basis for our council decision-making process. So, is there any other comments that anyone's seen? Okay, this is moved by Councillor Somerville that the report be received. All those in favor? Carried. And then now, Councillor Drew had moved, based on discussion I had about that the code of conduct be conducted, review of the code of conduct be conducted, updated, and time-wise is on there. Is there?
Absolutely.
And my other comment would be just direction that also be included.
And obviously, this, just for clarification, this, code of conduct is going to come back to us for council to review as a policy. Councillor Back?
Thank you. Through the mayor, these are two different documents, two different policies, and I don't think one should be connected to the other. They are separate documents which we have to abide by, and I don't think they should be linked.
You're talking about the code of conduct and the procedural bylaw?
Yes.
They're separate.
Councillor Drew?
No, that was just by direction that a comment or something be said within the code of conduct that councillors are expected to adhere to all of our policies and procedures.
Yeah, but I believe the,
It's in there. Why are we signing it if it's not there? It's not.
the Integrity Commissioner's report had referenced code of conduct, but there may be some procedural bylaw overlap, and I would expect council, staff, when they're doing the report, if it's got a conflict, it's going to come back and deal with those issues. Is that part of that, or is it?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. We'll review, given direction to review the code of conduct, we'll do just that, and we'll review the whole thing and determine whether that's needs to be, that gap is filled as well.
Councillor Back?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, just so I'm clear on this, I still think that they are two separate policies. Otherwise, might as well have a line budget, a line item in our budget for the multitude of Integrity Commission complaints that would come forth if council were not to abide step by step with the procedural bylaw. We're human beings, and these are living meetings. And we're not robots or computers that go exactly as procedural. You yourself do not. So if anybody were to watch from home on YouTube, they could then, if you connect these two documents to a code of conduct, we might as well have a 2% levy for code of conduct Integrity Commission breaches on every meeting.
Councillor Back, I understand your concerns, but I think it's for us to give the direction for staff to come up with the changes, and it still comes back to us if there's gaps that are there that still need to be addressed. So this is not us implementing all those changes now. This is us saying, yes, we really want this done expedited by the end of the year, and it'll come back, and there'll be plenty of opportunity to deal with it, and if they won't be two documents into one, that is for sure, that we have to have the separate documents. So, you have to, I believe, we'll give staff the direction and through the motion to come back with this update, and it'll address all of the concerns that we have. Councillor Somerville?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do not agree with the end of the year. I would like it done as soon as possible.
Yes, as the clerk has rightly pointed out, because this is a motion that's not on the agenda, we need 2/3 majority to introduce this motion, which would be 4 of the 6. So, Councillor Drew, are you introducing the 2/3 majority, or motion to rules procedure, motion that a review of the update of the Township of Council Code of Conduct be implemented. But it's not on the agenda, so we need 2/3 majority. Okay. Yeah. So, two-thirds majority on the suspension of the rules motion. Question? So we have to deal with this 2/3 majority in order to suspend the rules of procedure. So, any questions on that? All those in favor? Carried. So the rules have been suspended now. The motion that was put forward, can you read it back, Mr. Clerk, what you have, and then Councillor Kett wants us to make an amendment.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So what I have at the moment from Councillor Drew is that a review and update of the Township of Scugog Council Code of Conduct be completed by the end of the year, and that council be required to follow all policies and procedures within that code.
Councillor Kett? No, that we've already suspended the rules, so that we're dealing with this motion, so Councillor Somerville?
Yes, I would like that amended to as soon as possible.
So it's accepted as a friendly amendment?
Can I have it read again, please?
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have the motion now as that a review and update of the Township of Scugog Council Code of Conduct be completed as soon as possible, and that council be required to follow all policies and procedures within that code.
That's fine.
Councillor Kett?
Thank you, Mayor. I definitely would like to put a definite date on it, which would be October 31st. And I'd also request that by October 15th, there's communication with all council members regarding their opinion on the changes.
You're putting forward an amendment like that. I would look to the mover for it to see if accepted, but I would think that the staff would be consulted on the workload involved.
We want a quality product at the end of this, and I would suggest that as soon as possible would achieve what we're looking for, and hopefully October the 15th is probably not feasible to get a good quality product.
I'm sorry, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but what I requested was that the clerk communicate with council by the 15th with their opinions on the code of conduct. I'm not requesting that the code of conduct or his recommendations be done at that date. I'm requesting his recommendations be done by the 31st of October.
So you're saying to
I'd rather have a date put to it, because soon as possible means a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
But what, just to clarify the first part there, you're saying to make sure that there's an opportunity for councilors to give input into...
Exactly. I feel that that's what's been missing the last little while, that councilors haven't been given the input, so that's why I'm requesting it.
Mr. CAO, I don't know if the timing, you had comment on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council are welcome to give their comments and suggestions to the code of conduct, and we would value those. If you want to do that as soon as you can, by October the 15th, that would be great. I believe staff are totally in agreement with having a new, updated code of conduct. It's necessary. It's necessary that we move forward quickly. That's definitely in everyone's best interest. Saying that, the code of conduct needs to be completed thoroughly and needs to be done with consultation with our legal law firm and such. And I would rather not put a date of October 31st. As soon as possible will be as soon as possible. It may be done by that date. I think we could commit to no later than a November date. I just know how these things work. It will be a document we'll want to turn our mind to, get feedback, and hear council's feedback, consult legally, and get something before you. I would say it would be possible in the November date as at the latest, but I do agree with as quickly as possible. I'm just not sure we can make it by the October date with the reporting deadlines and the work that needs to be undertaken.
I'd like a date, and if it's a November date, then that's fine with me.
So Councillor Kettle, just looking at the dates here, and council's November 27th, but the GPA is early at November 6th, which really isn't giving much time on there, so,
With the
Yeah.
December GPA, if it is a survey, isn't it?
Yep. December 4th is a GPNA,
No later than.
no later than that, but if
My
it gets,
wedding anniversary.
but if it comes sooner, then it can be,
Well, then I would agree that the clerk send it to council before the end of November for the December 4th.
okay, Councillor Drew, do you accept that as a friendly amendment, or?
I think as soon as possible, it's only fair to staff and to us as well. We get our comments in and questions and concerns in. As soon as possible, staff has a report, he can tie it down.
So staff has acknowledged that they would do it by then. Is that sufficient for you, or are you going to go with a formal amendment?
No, I would like the amendment to be just a specific date, and December the 4th, having the report sent to council.
Okay, so Councillor Drew,
Before that?
yeah, Councillor Drew has said that she's happy to leave it as soon as possible, so I'm asking you
Well, then we can
again.
have a vote then.
Okay, so Councillor Cat is putting forward an amendment to have it as December 4th GPNA with November 30th draft to council. I think that's what your words were, or November 30th to council? Councillor Guido?
I still have a question on the original motion.
I'll come back to you. On the amendment? Any questions on the amendment? On the amendment. Just, this is on the amendment we're dealing with now, which is changing the date to December 4th, and how do you have it documented? By the GPNA on December 4th, and a draft to council by November 30th.
I just have a
Councilor
comment.
Somerville?
Yes, thank you. As soon as possible means at the earliest possible convenience. That's what it means. It doesn't have to have a definite time. It means as soon as you possibly can get it done.
Councilor Cleo?
I was just going to mention the fact that it was staff that provided the date of November, so
Yeah.
if they felt that that was an unreachable date, maybe they wouldn't have suggested that date.
Yes.
Just on that, I agree with the urgency of updating the policy. I think it needs to be done, and we'll do our very best, and I think over a 2-month period, we could meet the GPNA date of December. And if it can be done earlier, we'll bring that forward also. Yes.
Okay.
But no later than.
So on the amendment, any other questions on that? All those in favor of the amendment? Carried. Back to the original motion, amended, as amended. Councilor Guido.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to understand the importance of the latter or last part of the motion, that we follow all policies and procedures. Isn't that the whole point of having a code of conduct, is that we follow the code of conduct? Or is there something else meant in that motion?
Councilor Drew.
It says, within the, code, does it not say? Within the code, at the end? Yeah. So, yeah, it's just...
So it's just pointing out the obvious, that we follow the code of conduct?
My point in mentioning this is, in this report from the Integrity Commissioner, the Integrity Commissioner says that it was not a violation of the Code of Conduct, it was a violation of our procedures bylaw, right? Procedures bylaw? My point is that that type of thing should be in our Code of Conduct, that we do have to adhere to our policies and procedures within the township.
Meaning then the procedural bylaw?
Any of our policies and procedures.
So you're just saying to clarify that the code of conduct includes reference to that, so that it then becomes jurisdiction of Integrity Commissioner? Yes. Okay. Councilor Back.
Thank you, through the mayor. Once again, then that should be a line item in our budget for the multitude of Integrity Commission complaints regarding our breaches of procedure bylaw. If somebody inadvertently does not do something at a council meeting as per the procedures exact, I really don't think the two documents should be linked. I would like, prior to that happening, I'd like to see proof that other municipalities link these two documents, these two bylaws. Otherwise, I wouldn't suggest we put those forth.
I may make a suggestion here. I believe in the contract that we have with the Integrity Commissioner that it also includes education to council. I'm not suggesting that, but it also includes review of documentation. So it might be a suggestion that we have the Integrity Commissioner do a quick vetting of it, because if ultimately he's our Integrity Commissioner, then we should be taking his suggestions on it, so then it saves us all a lot of time and money. So, Councilor Back?
Thank you, through the mayor. So then again, I guess I will put forth a friendly amendment to strike that last part of this motion that we are going to be voting on.
So what wouldn't be a
For the direction for the clerk to link these two documents together.
It's not a friendly amendment unless Councilor Drew agreed to it, and...
Then I'll do a separate, please.
So you're just wanting to take that reference to the other policies out of that? Okay. Councilor Cat?
Yes, Mayor, thank you.
First of all, is this on the amendment?
This is on what the comments that was just made, because
On
what
the
I'd like to
amendment?
say, yes, the one that was just made on this amendment. I've read this document 5 or 6 times, very interesting, and not once did I see anywhere that it said that I didn't follow procedure.
No, I don't think so. The only place that it says that...
No, so that was just said, and I just wondered if Councilor Drew would like to retract that.
God.
If I'm in error, I'm sorry, but I'm sure that I read that.
I didn't.
Well, please find it.
Okay, so right now, we have an amendment on the floor that's to deal with the
Yeah.
removal of reference to policies and procedures. And I don't want to get into the weeds. I'm really, I thought by suggesting that we have our integrity commissioner vet it, that we're not creating the document, let the staff create it, vetted by legal, vetted by integrity commissioner, comes back to us in its form, we then get our opportunity to comment on it, plus we would have seen the draft. So I don't think we should be in this motion trying to direct what we want done. We should be just sending off in the motion that we want this to be undertaken and we expect the professionals to come back with the polished product. So we have an amendment on the floor. I really don't think that takes away from what we're trying to do. I just don't want to get caught up for the next hour doing amendments and on a motion where we know what needs to be done and let the professionals do it. So, on the amendment, you still want the amendment forward?
Through the mayor, yes, because I think you just clarified exactly what I said, that we should let our clerk do his job, legal do their job, and the integrity commissioner to vet it. And if we put this clause in, then it's being directed by council, and I don't think that's our purpose.
Okay, Councillor Back, on the amendment, any amendment is to strike out the reference to the procedural, follow policies and procedures within the code, and that council be required to follow all policies and procedures within the code. Questions on that? All right, all those in favor? Okay, that is carried. So now back to the original amended motion as amended twice. Questions on that? I'm assuming that there's direction to staff that the integrity commissioner will vet it, or would you like that in the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That would be a part of my process
Okay.
anyway, so whether it's there or not, I'm still going to do it.
Okay, good. All right, any other final questions on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next item is notice of motion. Councillor Kett. Councillor Kett put forward motion. Want to speak to your motion?
Yes, Mayor, with the report that came back and the conflicting or evidence, I'm requesting to have the judicial review as in the motion that's put before you, that the municipality agree to pay the reasonable legal fees of council to Councillor Kett, together with the disbursements and applicable taxes, and further that the municipality indemnify Councillor Kett against any cost awards made against him with regards to the application for a judicial review of Harold G. Elston's Integrity Commission reports dated February 27th, 2017, and April the 27th, 2017.
Councillor Guido?
Time for questions?
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two questions right off the bat. I would like to understand what the word reasonable would mean. Reasonable to you may be different than reasonable to me, and I think if the taxpayers' dollars are going to be spent, then we would need to be able to justify what reasonable means.
Councillor Kett?
The amounts that were given to me were between $25,000 and $30,000. Possibly a lot less with the information that's come forward, but because of the number of codes that were broken in the beginning, they thought it would be between $20,000 and $25,000, but with this report, it'll probably be a lot different. So I would say an upside of $30,000.
May I continue, Mr. Mayor? I am luckily very unfamiliar with judicial reviews. Who would be conducting this? Would it be Councillor Kett's lawyers, or we would retain our own lawyer to do this? Maybe the clerk would know the answer? Councillor Kett?
Councillor Kett, what is your intent with that?
We would have to put in an application for a judicial review, bring forth the evidence. And if there was no opposition, it would be a lot less than if there was.
So who's "we"?
My council and myself.
Councilor Guido?
May I continue? Okay, so then, Councillor Kett, your legal counsel would submit a application for a judicial review or submit an outline as to what they're looking to achieve?
He would do the application for the judicial review.
Okay, and in that application, would they indicate what you're hoping to review in the judicial review?
Well, it would be reviewing the whole report from Harold G. Elston.
So are you looking to do the JR on the findings or how he found the findings? The whole process or his recommendation?
Absolutely, the whole process from beginning to end.
And they think that this can be accomplished in up to $30,000?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, my question is to the CAO and clerk, then, how do we typically, and maybe typically isn't the right answer, because maybe you don't have experience, but are we basically just agreeing to a blank check as far as, if we pass this motion, because while his legal counsel may say it's 30,000, it may end up being far greater?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just a couple things in that regard. Did check with our legal counsel about estimated costs, and he did estimate it in the range of 35 to 50,000. And I do have some concerns that we are we would be embarking on a process where costs are unknown. $35 to $50,000 for the JR. There's a portion of this motion that speaks to covering all costs associated with any action against Councillor Kett, and to indemnify him against any action and cover those costs. The way I read it, those costs are also unknown, and I would think would be in addition to the judicial review costs that we just discussed.
One last one, my apologies. To our Director of Finance, if this is passed, where would the money or the funds come from in order to cover these costs?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we'd look to any budget availability in our legal line item, and then it would just have to be managed throughout all of the budget through corporate-wide.
I had to chuckle at that, because just based on the figures thrown out from our past integrity commissioners and everything else that we've dealt with this year, I'm sure there's not much, if anything, left in that. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Drew, is that next?
Thank you. In this motion, and I'm not sure that it's very clear, is it the intent that the municipality also pay for the legal expenses that have been charged so far to Councillor Kett for going through for advice or whatever was done for the Integrity Commissioner's report in the first place? So that's a question. Also, the 25 to 30,000, is that just for the judicial review alone? And then there will be the legal fees on top of that for performing the advice or the application for the judicial review and all of the legal expenses. Could I have an answer to that, please?
Councillor Kett, do you have answers?
Sure. Where would you like me to start?
Your intention through this motion for council to pay, the municipality to pay for your legal expenses that you incurred during the process of the Integrity Commissioner's report and investigation?
No.
You've already paid those and you do not expect reimbursement for that?
I do not expect any reimbursement.
This $25,000 to $30,000 for the judicial review, is that for the review alone, or will there be legal expenses on top of that for your
That will include the judicial review and my legal, and that's a guesstimate. The actual guesstimate was 20 to 25,000. I put a contingency on that.
Okay, thank you. And the words here, the municipality indemnify Councillor Kett against any cost awards made against him with regards to an application for a judicial review. What does that mean?
I'm not sure, it was rewritten. That's not exactly what I put down, so,
So if someone
it
were
was
to
just,
bring...
you know what, my lawyer wrote this, and it has nothing to do with the application. It's just, it should be worded, further that the municipality indemnify Councillor Kett against any cost awards made against him.
So, does that mean if someone were to sue you as a result of the Integrity Commissioner's reports, sometime in the future, that you would expect to be indemnified for that?
I think what it means is if, Scugog, or the judicial review finds me guilty, that they would ask me to pay Scugog's expenses.
And so this would indemnify you, you wouldn't have to pay?
Yes.
Mr. CAO, would we incur any legal expenses as well, in addition to this case?
Through the mayor, we would. I'm sure that Councillor Kett's JR process would involve the township participating, and in that case, we would want to have legal representation.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, I'm not comfortable dealing with that today because of the ambiguous wording that Councillor Kett is not sure is his intention, and I would suggest that they go back and word this how it's supposed to be worded, because I don't understand it, and I don't think the mover understands it either.
I'm sorry, Councillor Drew, that you feel that way. I sent it in differently, and it was reworded for the agenda. So, I do understand what it means, I'm just not sure how the clerk has written it in. If you wish...
Councillor Kett?
Yes.
I just caution you with, accusations on that. I want, it's a very fine line between, if you're going to lay blame on misinterpretation of this. I think this is a very big motion that you have forward here, and I would expect there to be a high level of scrutiny on what this council is voting on, so...
Okay, Your Honor, and I was expected to explain it, and I wasn't really sure exactly what the clerk had written.
Well...
Does it mean the same to me? Yes. And do I understand it? Yes. But does Councillor Drew? No. So what I would like to do is explain it, that the way it was written had a legal firm and that in it, and the clerk has redacted that and changed the wording a tiny bit.
Councillor Kett, I'm going to have the clerk speak for himself and have a chance to defend the process.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to council, I did not do anything with that line with regards to municipality indemnify Councillor Kett against any cost awards made against him. I did not touch that line whatsoever. That came directly from Councillor Kett.
Yeah, Mr. CAO, you can...
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to indicate that I was party to the back and forth emails that went between the clerk and Councillor Kett, and the clerk was just clarifying the meaning of the resolution. The resolution, I must agree, was not clear, and the clerk was seeking clarification, and any edits to the original resolution was done in concurrence with Councillor Kett through the email, and was done to be helpful so that the resolution could be better understood when it came to council.
That's exactly correct. That's exactly correct.
Just wanted to-
All I'm saying is that the words were changed around, and now Councilor Drew is finding a different meaning. So what I'm trying to do is explain what happened. At the very end of the one that I submitted, it says further that the municipality indemnify Councilor Cat against any cost awards made against him. That's very matter of fact, but now Councilor Drew's reading in regards to any application for the judicial review. So all I'm saying is what the extra cost would be. The extra cost would be if the municipality was awarded costs. And if you're asking if I did agree to that, I did agree to that, and the clerk put it on the
So I just
agenda.
wanted to make sure that the way you had said it the first time, that it was laying responsibility on the clerk of rewording your motion when the clerk is there, as he is for everybody, to assist in creating...
I understand that, and that's not my intention,
Okay.
to throw accusations, and I never would.
Good. I'm glad that that's clarified. So, based on our procedural bylaw, if a member of council with a notice of motion wants it deferred, it would be item 7.27. A member desiring to introduce a subject or discussion, notice of motion has been met. The clerk shall place a notice of motion on the council agenda. The notice of motion may be discussed and dealt with by council unless a member requests that the matter be dealt with at the next regular meeting. So, there's some ambiguity in here, so we need to clarify it, but I do agree that there's some questions with the way that is and what it is you're ultimately asking for here, so what is the interpretation of the next meeting? Okay, at the council meeting. All right. So the council meeting. So that it's in our procedural bylaw. We don't have anything to comment or do anything on it. It's deferred to the council meeting. Is there anything that will assist in procedure on this? Councilor Guido?
Thank you. I don't think it will assist with procedure, but if this does occur or is occurring, is there some way for us, I don't know how we do quotes with legal fees, but is there some way when this comes back that we have a verified dollar amount associated with it? Because it's very difficult to make any type of decision on something that could be from $0 to upwards to anywhere.
Councilor Cat? That's your motion, so Councilor Guido is asking if you must have received an estimate or something. If
It's just verbal.
So, Councilor, I think that you have to understand that us as voting members of this council, it's very difficult with a lot of questions to just, like Councilor Guido said before, is to authorize a blank check for something to be done without having something more than this paragraph that's here. So, I would suggest that as this is being deferred, that you take that as an opportunity to get more information to help answer those questions that we have in 2 weeks. Councilor Somerville?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, first of all, an application has to go in for the judicial review. As to whether we get it or we don't get it, I think we're jumping our gun here, because I think he has to, an application has to be...
Just want to make sure, you said "we" doing a judicial review.
Sorry.
The township wouldn't be doing the judicial review, and
No.
we wouldn't be...
An application has to
We
be
wouldn't be
forwarded
applying.
for a judicial review. And if they decide against it, then it's done. So, I think that's the first step. If he decides to put it in, then we can bring it back. But I think it has to go in first. And then, if it isn't accepted, then it's done. It's dead in the water.
So, based on our procedural rule, that we can't deal with this now anyways, it goes to council, so it'll be there at the next meeting. Any questions or clarifications wanted to ask?
I have one more question on that.
Counselor Somerville?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to know how much does it cost to put an application in?
Well, I think this is what I'm getting at, is any of these questions you have as counselors that may help Counselor Kett out, why don't you send the questions to him and he
Okay,
can try to
that's
answer
perfect.
them when it comes back. Counselor Drew?
Just wondered if it's staff's intention to seek a legal opinion on this motion from our perspective.
So we would have to go into a closed session to answer that? Or you're saying if it is to be done as part of this undertaking?
I just wondered if staff, if it's their intention to seek an opinion from legal counsel on this motion and what that entails.
Mr. CAO, did you seek that? I know you had an estimate.
We have had a conversation with our legal representative, and I would agree, and I think that it would be in council's benefit perhaps hear from him at the next meeting if he can come, or give something in writing with respect to this motion. I think the matter is Councillor Kett can apply for a JR. That's totally within his ability as a member of the public and a council member. It's whether the council and the citizens should be paying for that JR and all the costs that are associated with this.
Councillor Back?
Thank you through the mayor, and I don't mean to muddy the waters, but if this does get deferred and staff inquires on the price, then I feel that at this moment then I would like my name to be added to Councillor Kett's motion, the original motion.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll be dealing with this when it comes back as council, but as CO has already mentioned, he will reach out to our solicitor to make sure we can have him there if we want to go into closed session and ask any questions of that, or whatever we can ask in the open session, so. Okay. Proclamations, that's already dealt with procedurally, so now I'm just at proclamations. As issued by, we had a flag raising. We didn't miss anything on that, right? Flag raising, which was held for the 50th anniversary for Durham College. The paper nicely got me fumbling with the flag, I think. I questioned why that was the only picture that was good, but we're proud to have Durham College in our region, and 15 minutes south of us, and many members of our community, or parents, or themselves or children have attended there or plan to attend. We're very fortunate to have the post-secondary education so close to us. So we had the flag right out there. I don't know if it's past, it's still today. Next was ACFO Durham Peterborough Franco Ontario Day on September 25th. It's been requested for flag raising. And Schoolog Council of the Arts Culture Day, September 29th to October 1st. Prostate cancer for the Prostate Cancer Awareness Month, the whole month of September. And United Durham Way, which we also had a flag raising an hour and a half before the Durham College one for United Way Month. And we're fortunate to have them active in our community, because all funds raised by United Way in Schoolog, the funds stay in Schoolog. So we had our trike race there out front to help bring awareness. And we're happy to have them as part of our community, raising funds for those in need. And that ends the proclamation section. No closed session. We need a mover for the proclamations. Councillor Kett, are you moving the proclamations motion?
Yeah, I'd like to
Sure.
move that.
All those in favor? Carried. Closed session we don't need. Before we adjourn, Councillor Kett, did you have a question?
Yes, I was just wondering if we came up with where I was found guilty of the procedures.
Oh. So, sure.
Is there an apology or no?
Well, I don't think it was an intent behind it. I think you brought it to the attention, Councillor Kett, that...
Well, it would have ended up in the newspaper if it wasn't...
Yeah, so I agree, the media's here. Councillor Drew said she if she inadvertently said that, she...
If I interpreted this wrong, then I apologize, but I got to find it.
So, she apologizes unless she finds it.
Would she be able to withdraw it until such time as she finds it?
Because of the sensitive nature of this whole issue, Councillor Drew, can you just afford us the liberty of saying that if it's...
I will apologize, and if I find it,
Yep.
then we will deal with it.
We'll deal with it then.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much. I need a motion to... Good. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Somerville, all those in favor? Carried.